Hello, and welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to be covering how to manage your defensives, plus how to deal with certain defensives, and the differences between 8v8 and 4v4. This will be a mostly listening video, though I will have visual indicators so you know what I'm talking about. So if I talk about a certain defensive, I'll have some sort of indicator so you guys know what I'm talking about. The first thing I want to get into is basically damage reduction and how damage reduction actually works, and why some defenses feel worse than others, and why some feel sometimes just overpowered. The base example I'm going to show you guys right now is one of the most important one to learn. When we go to details, we scroll down to our armor rating. This is a heavy armor user, so if you're a medium armor user or a light armor user, you have less damage reduction. There's like one exception with Assassin, you can get your armor rating increased, which is nice. That's extra damage reduction. It's not that bad, but do keep in mind that armor rating damage reduction can be fully armor penetrated by classes like Arsenal and Carnage. But if you look at this, the internal and elemental cannot be cannot be armor penetrated. So this is just flat damage reduction that we have here, which is a little weird, right? When you have armor penetration, it's talking about this damage reduction right here, and not necessarily damage reduction that is counted here. However, as you see in brackets, it says includes armor. So just try to keep that in mind and keep those separated. So for example, we'll show you the best defensive that Powertech has, and that's shield. The reason why it's shield is because it gives you 25% damage reduction for both fight damage and yellow. So this is not only very good, it's not armor penetratable. So against classes like Carnage and Arsenal, you're much more in favor of using shield, or having shield in times that you're actually scared of, like burst windows. Because if you go on the other hand and pop power yield, for example, this is 50% damage reduction, but it's armor penetratable. So when those things are hitting you, they're just going to hit you as if you have no damage reduction outside of the internal and elemental. So that's a huge thing that you need to keep in mind of, and is definitely something that will get you killed if you don't fully understand how damage reduction works and why things are hitting you so hard. So in priority, obviously, shield, most powerful defensive that you have. Power yield, not as much. That's usually why, not only because it's a 1 minute cooldown, it's why it's get used first, but also the offensive power of it. It's very good. Even if it didn't have the offensive power, and even if it didn't have like the 4 stack of power load, you would still use it first because it's less reliable against classes of armor pen. So another example would be going to lethality. Lethality is a little bit different, but somewhat the same. So we're going to look at this. We're in medium armor, so we have less damage reduction. And just give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. I had to sneeze. We have 20% damage reduction, right? And then we have 25% here, right? But it's not necessarily 25%. We have 5% damage reduction on top of our 10% internal and elemental, and then our energy and kinetic. So we have technically 5% added to our white damage reduction that cannot be armor penetrated. However, the 20.59 can be, because that's armor. So to give you an example, when I pop defense screen, when this falls off, I get defense chance. I get damage reduction by 15% for, I say 6 seconds. Very, very, very good. And this is to everything. So I have 40% damage reduction to white damage, and then I have 30 for yellow, which is nice, right? But another thing is that I don't know why it's like this, and I don't know if it makes it get calculated separately. I think it actually does, and I think that's part of why Revitalization is just so good. So we're going to pop this. If you read the tooltip, it says reduce damage received by 20%. Does not break stealth at the very bottom there. You don't actually see the damage reduction show up here. Doesn't mean that it's not there, because it 100% is there. So I assume the way that's probably calculated is that it goes into effect first, that 20% damage reduction, and then this damage reduction that you have here. Not that it really changes anything. It's just funky. It's not as clear. There are some damage reductions that will show up like this, and you won't be able to just fully see it through your damage reduction through defense. So just keep that in mind all the time. Will every single ability show up here? I don't know if that's intentional or if it's just a bug or they just overlooked it, but that's just something that you should keep in mind. And for the most part, if it's armor damage reduction, it's penetratable. And again, if it's not from armor, it's not penetratable. That's number one thing that you'll have to keep in mind. I'm sure most of the armor pin specs aren't doing that great, and then there's some classes that have access to some armor pin, like Fury, Marksman, and a couple others, like Rail Shot for AP. This is why these abilities perform better against. It's not necessarily better, but they're going to do better when somebody has a lot of armor, for like Power Yield, for example. So with that out of the mind, or not out of mind, with that out of the way, we'll go into other things. All right, now we're going to get into defensives and how we'll separate them and how we'll use them in AV8 4v4. Now, typically in PvP, we're not just going to cover just the damage reduction and how to use your defenses, but also the idea of playing aggressively as like a defensive, like having good offense is good defense, if that makes sense. Powertech is one of the greatest examples of that. So basically, like going into a war zone, your lowest cooldown. Basically, if you're going to use any defenses, you always want to use your lowest cooldowns first, and your longest ones last. And the reason is that if you use your longest cooldown ones, chances are your shortest cooldown ones are probably back again. And just keep doing that, and that's basically how you do a DCD rotation. There will be exceptions, and I'll talk about that. But going into, for Powertech and Vanguard, your number one defensive will be your Power Yield, which is called Balmorian Advanced Weaponry for Vanguard. Super weird. I don't like it. Power Yield, basically. There's also a talent. If we go to combat style, this will allow it to last for 15 seconds. This one will allow it to be up slightly sooner if you're getting tunneled a lot. So this is one of the classes that actually punishes people pretty hard for just tunneling them. So having this is just super nice, because this means if you actually do get tunneled, you're getting your Power Yield up a little bit more often. However, this one does mean that you can have a better cold toe, but also you can have Power Yield for 5 extra seconds. And since Power Load is baked into your kit now, when you take critical damage during Power Yield, you actually get a stack of energy load. Now with that out of the way, so basically why would we want to open with that? Well, one, it gives us 4 stacks of energy burst, so that means that we can immediately just pump, right? But it also gives us this, the damage reduction. So anybody hitting us with white damage is going to do way less damage, like way less damage. Yellow damage will still hurt us relatively hard, but for that brief moment, like if you're hitting into somebody that does light damage, they're probably not going to hurt you. And the specs that hurt you the most during PvP when you have Power Yield up is Carnage and Arsenal. They're not going to be able to load up their stacks, like the Supercharged Gas or their Zen window probably immediately on you, so they're not going to be able to completely ramp their damage like immediately during the Power Yield, so you're still getting good value there. However, obviously the follow-up ability would be Sonic Round, right? Or Sonic Missile, I think it's on Republic. We wouldn't take Sonic Rebounder, but this is a very good ability. This reflects any kind of damage ability, so it could even be TD if you time it well and nobody else hits into it. So this is a really good one. However, the second CC Breaker is far, far better, and also having additional range is just super good. But don't forget this one. This one's pretty fun to play with. And let's say I didn't need a second CC Breaker because I'm not getting CC'd, and I needed more support from my team. Like let's say we had like 2 PTs or something. We could time these perfectly between each other and basically reflect abilities during burst windows. And this actually saves people, because if you're able to make somebody miss a, let's say, ambush or energy burst or another hard-hitting ability like halted offense or thundering blast, thermal detonator, stuff like that. If you can make somebody miss something, this is a huge support, and it kind of has a little bit higher skill ceiling because it's all about you being able to time it perfectly as they try to use a high damage ability. This does give up something very good though, so just keep in mind, not necessarily worth it as much as it used to be last expansion. But getting into why we use it is because in addition to activating Sonic Round, increases your defense chance by 30% for 6 seconds. This is just not for white damage, this is also for yellow damage. So you're getting 30% chance to dodge pretty much anything. That's incredibly overpowered. There's a reason why defense chance doesn't work for both damage types, and if it did, people would have been complaining about this game a long time ago, and defense chance in general a long time ago. Now I'm going to give you a demonstration real quick of what it looks like. All right, we are here, and I'm going to demonstrate the sound and what it looks like. So this is something very important for everybody to learn. If you want to play against a Vanguard or a Powertech, you need to know what this does and what the sound is and what it looks like. So when I pop this, it's hard to miss. The sound, very distinct. The visual effect, very clear. So basically what happens, I get 30% defense chance for 6 seconds, right? So after I use that, be wary about using your best moves, or be wary about, how to put it, like using a stun. A lot of people end up trying to use a stun, and a good Powertech or Vanguard is going to use their AoE taunt as they assume you're going to stun them. So if they think you're going to stun them, chances are they're going to pop this just so you waste your stun. It's something that they have to think of, but also something that you have to just be aware of. Like, oh, they just use this, so I can't stun them. Well, you could, but you're rolling the dice, right? So we'll go ahead and do this again, and we'll show you the icon. So this right here means defense chance. So this means that I can dodge. It's similar to the Powertech one. I think the Powertech one is just a little bit more darker. So that's something that you really, really want to keep in mind of. And then we're going to go into our next defensive, which will be shield. And basically the way we want to use shield is quite often, because we get cooldown reduction for it. And we find it passive. It's been a little bit. Don't think it's this one. Well, this tells you that high impact bolt hits 30%. Ignores 30% of the target's armor, which is good. And then you also have a sunder with your punch. Nope, this one, I think it's this one right here. When you take damage, the active cooldown of your active shield is reduced by 3 seconds. This cannot occur more than every 1.5 seconds. In addition, when taking damage, you have 20% chance to emit energy redoubt, which lasts for 6 seconds and absorbs 5,000 damage. This is pretty good. Same thing that mercenaries have, right? So when I pop shield, as I showed you before, it gives me a lot of damage reduction. And it's up decently a lot of time, I guess. Or a decent amount of time. Good uptime, I guess. That's the words I'm looking for. So this is like your next one. Shield is your ultimate defensive ability. This is the one that you want to use, and this is the most important one to use, and it will make the biggest difference. If you're about to die and you have shield, it's 100% sometimes worth using. If somebody is going to protect you in an arena, it's a completely different story. You still go through your priority of defensives, but I'll show you basically how I use my defensives, and you can watch my old solo ranked videos. The rotation of defensives have not changed, and you can use emergency power still, even though it gives tank stats. It doesn't really matter. Losing those stats is not huge, but it will lower your damage a little bit. So I do recommend learning how to actually do damage. As Powertech and Vanguard, it's one of the hyper aggressive classes, basically how Marauder used to play before they got double camo. The class is all about doing damage, and if you can't do damage, you just shouldn't really be on the class, because that's the only way they can make anything happen. If you're not doing damage, you're not useful. You don't take very much damage, and yeah, you're just, no offense, I don't mean any offense to anybody that's not really doing damage on the class, but the whole point of the class is that, one, it does a shit ton of damage, and two, it's very easy to do that damage. So when you're not able to perform, you kind of probably should swap classes. And there are some situations, even if you're good, you probably don't want to be on this class because it gets shut down too easily. So basically going into the order of how you would use stuff. We'll start with power yield. So obviously, probably open with TD, deep. We'll do our Sonic round probably because in the opener we'll probably 100% get stunned. So we want to try to have a chance to resist that, use our our cell burst into power yield into another cell burst. That's just, basic opener. Obviously you can adapt your opener, but you really just want to get your power yield off as soon as you can to mitigate damage. And then once you've had that just for a little bit, sometimes it is worth using adrenal at the same time, but I like to save my adrenal a little bit. And the main reason I like to do that is because I want to ride my Kolto. And if I want to ride my Kolto, I need to have damage reduction to make that healing effective. So if you have 45% Kolto, it really synergizes well. So last expansion, I would be riding on a 35%. And this expansion, you can ride on a 45%. Now, there's one thing that you'll have to keep in mind is that it lasts for 8 seconds. As soon as Kolto gets procced, you only have 8 seconds of this healing. This healing is really good, and if you go over the threshold or somebody heals you over the threshold while you're in it, it's going to still, it's still ticking, it's still going to fall off. So you have only 8 seconds since it first gets triggered, and then you have to use like a med pack. So what you would do is power yield, right? Sonic Rebounder, then shield. And if you get low enough, you should be using Kolto. Obviously, use Kolto to break something if you can. Kolto can be the first defensive if you're breaking a stun immediately. And your second breaker should be for the harder CC that's probably going to wipe out you. And usually, if you're taking a lot of damage, you'll have shield up with Kolto at the same time. And if Kolto is proccing and you have shield up, you probably want to throw a journal just so you don't die through your Kolto. It's very, very dangerous to live on your Kolto. Again, 8 seconds from when it gets triggered. You want to try to push that out for the whole 8 seconds. Though, don't be so greedy that you get yourself killed. Then you're going to get flamed. Nobody likes that. So you're going to pop your adrenal, right? But in the best situation where their damage isn't really bursty and you don't have to worry about some sudden burst damage, you can kind of be greedy and do power yield into AoE taunt into Kolto with adrenal, and then pop shield and med pack. That would be the ideal way of doing it, and that's how you should do it as a Pyro PT. You can use your shield a little bit earlier as a Pyro PT because it does give you CC immunity, but I don't necessarily recommend that because you're not getting cooldown reduction for your shield. And it's hard to justify when you can kind of use like Kolto greedily. This is definitely just something that you have to be very comfortable with the class and not only know your limitations, but how much damage the enemy team is going to do to you. The difference of somebody throwing an AoE taunt while you're living on Kolto is a massive difference. I'm going to tell you right now, if somebody can do that for you, especially if you call it out or you just have a really aware team, that will make the difference of you probably dying or not dying through Kolto and being able to live through the entire 8 seconds without having to, pop shield and med pack. Now, in 8v8, the priority rotation for defensives is still the same. The only difference is that you can get away with using your shield at higher health pools. If people see you low, chances are people are going to dogpile on you. So sometimes you don't actually want to take the appearance of being low unless you want somebody to dogpile you, which in regs I greed all the time. This is the best place to learn how to push your defensives to their actual limits. This is why I say regs are extremely good for learning how to play your class, but also how to get into, playing an arena, because you can actually limit test your defensives and your ability to play. And, sometimes it'll be unfortunate, you'll just get rolled, but there are some games that you'll get into with not the best of players, and you'll really be able to limit test your defensives and get more comfortable with them and understand what classes are going to do a lot of damage, regardless of that defensive being up or not. Now, we're definitely not going over tank, because I don't feel like tank is something I really want to talk about. It's just to have its own dedicated video, and if you guys are interested in something like that, maybe I'll consider doing it. tanky role in this game is definitely one of the most demanding things that you can play. And in order to play it correctly, you have to play like 2 or 3 different ways, depending on how your team is, which is really, really complicated, and it's just a lot of game knowledge that you need to know. So again, in Arena, it's going to be different. In AV8, it's more so about popping things before you take damage. This is one thing that you also need to learn. As classes that have good damage reduction, you need to pop it before you take the damage, not after you take the damage, because you do not have a way to get the health back. And when you go to playing against a Powertech and a Vanguard, you need to see when they pop shield, and if you can't afford to like kind of ignore their shield, ignore them. Just let them have their shield damage, and then once their shield's gone, hit them. If you see them pop power yield and you don't do good damage through power yield, just don't hit them. If you can afford to not hit them, do that. Otherwise, try to kite them or get out of their ability to easily hit you. Chances are they'll probably just tab target anyway. So when playing with them, their defenses are very good, but they're not there for that long. And when they're not there, they're relatively squishy. So this is why a lot of people say, oh, this class is really squishy. It's probably because they blow their defenses. If you can't get them to blow their defenses, or they're gunning for you because you know how to kill them efficiently, it becomes a completely different story. And the best thing I can tell you is just have more people hit the person, which is, playing into their hand, but it's also, really the only thing you can do. It's a very aggressive class, and it's just kind of like designed that way. It's really just like how 5.0 Marauder was, basically. And I really missed when Marauder was like that, so I've ended up playing this class a lot more ever since then. I think Defel, Splash Jeans is an abomination, and Powertech has just kind of like stepped up ever since then, which is sad, but hey, I mean, I enjoy both of them, so it's whatever. Combat and Carnage has been surprisingly a little bit more fun, but they've neutered that class. But regardless, that's pretty much how you will deal with it, and can't really give like too crazy of like info. Sorry about that. All right, my dogs are going wild, so I had to pause there. Again, I can't really give anything too crazy because it's very situational. This class is just going to be that way, and a lot of these defenses are going to be that way, but hopefully you've learned kind of how their defenses work, and then also, again, shield, best defense that they have. Slonker Bounder, avoid defense chance, and for power yield, it's only 10 seconds. Most classes can just hit through it. Well, not most classes. Classes with armor pen can kind of hit through it, especially if they get sundered plus armor pen. It's kind of like the defense is just not as effective, which is super nice. Sunder is definitely something that you should always apply to a power type because they're a heavy armor user. Same thing goes for tanks and other heavy armor users. Sunder is extremely valuable. Other than that, we're pretty much done with this class. We'll go into lethality / ruffian. I'll just spec swap to it, and we'll get into that. All right, now to cover lethality, we'll also do concealment. We're not covering healers either, so I'm not gonna really go into that. But the same general idea goes to them too. And again, as the previous, when I was talking about Powertech, everything I said also applies to Pyro. I didn't really make that clear. And power yield on Pyro lasts longer, so you can definitely afford to go Power yield into Colta. My bad. Way safer, and then go into shield at back. You can definitely get away with that a lot better because you get 3% damage reduction on Colta for Pyro. But now getting into lethality, we'll explain this one a lot more because it is the meta spec, and then we'll get into concealment. There's not much to concealment in comparison, but I'll show you guys something. So first thing that you want to learn is that if you're ever going against a white damage class, where's the defense chance here? So when you roll, you get 20% defense chance, and it lasts for about 2 seconds. So that's one thing to keep in mind. This also works for healer too. This isn't just for lethality. So if you roll, it does have that. That is a lot of defense chance. There's not yellow damage defense chance, that is only for white damage. So keep that in mind, that'll help you. But also at the same time, we have Revitalizers. Revitalizers heals you for percent of your health, so that's based on how much HP you actually have. And then you also get 20% damage reduction. This damage reduction cannot be armor penetrated. So the only amount of damage reduction that you can actually armor penetrate here is about 20%. Chances are it's not really much a difference, but going into this, you see I have 5% flat damage reduction. So I have 5%, regardless for energy and kinetic, even if I could get 100% armor pent, and then internal 15%. When I pop Absorb / defense screen, this will be your #1 defensive that always pop. When it falls off, you will gain 15% for 6 seconds. This is very good. This is the #1 thing that you'll always use. And another good thing to take with it is the 5% heal. If you don't need Skedaddle, or don't know what's called on Imperial, if you don't actually do this, usually as lethality, you don't necessarily need it unless you're playing Arena. If you're playing Arena, definitely start taking this until you are comfortable enough to start using Med Screen, because the 5% heal is definitely really good. Percent heals are just really busted right now. Anyway, going back to here, since this DR will not show up here, you don't have to worry about that. Another thing to keep in mind is that lethality is one of the classes that have extra second on their evasion. If I remember where it is, it's one of your passives. Sorry, so I think it's this one right here. Yeah, okay, so 1 second. No. Where is it? I swear it's somewhere in here. It lasts for an extra second. So in comparison to the other 2 specs, your evasion is pretty long, and potentially taking the what's it called? There's a thing here. All right, well, I'm not gonna be able to find it, but just trust me, it's there. I promise. I swear. I wouldn't lie to you. Going into ability tree, that's what I meant to do. We have the ability to take 2 extra seconds on dodge. We're about, after the patch, we're going to get an extra second. So our evasion right now already is 4 seconds. So that's, oh, wrong button. See, that's 4 seconds. That's pretty good. It dodges all white damage abilities, right? If you get stunned, they can go through it. So just keep that in mind. So like if you're ever going to take anything besides Scramble, which lowers the cooldown of your dodge, do keep in mind it won't work while you're stunned. The Reflect will still work while you're stunned, but it's much easier for somebody to wait it out. But if you're ever going to take the stun, or not the stun, but the evasion that does damage, I'm not saying you should take this, but you probably should, as this will throw people off that you have evasion longer than what most people usually expect you to have it. So 4 seconds, and then it's about to be 5 seconds, and then you can get this to 6 and then 7. So you have 7 seconds of evasion, 7 seconds of 150% reflect. I'm not saying that's going to be good, so just putting that out here before I get any flack for this. I'm not saying it's going to be good, but it's not going to be bad. And then having this Scramble, just having this gives you more uptime on it. It means you can purge a lot more stuff, and you can just be more so immune to white damage yet again. This is just the best value right now, and giving up your hard stun for the extra 2 seconds. Not necessarily worth it, but if you're not worried about that and you're just going for max damage and you're cleaving, I would definitely say probably the evasion with the reflect evasion is probably a little bit better for number farming, unless you're absolutely terrible at keeping people in your AoE to spread. But usually if you're cleaving and you're looking at damage for reflect, you're probably not having to worry about that, if that makes sense. So getting into the main gimmick for what happened to Operative and Scoundrel in 6.0 is that we got Revitalizers, right? So this is your main #1 priority ability to get up, because 1 is your alacrity, allows your dots to tick faster. It's just overall good. It'll passively heal you without actually having to put probes. So you would use defense screen, that'll give you 15% defense chance, or not defense chance, but damage reduction, and then you could stack that with this. This lasts for 20 seconds if you're taking this talent, which you 100% always should take this talent because it increases the duration. It also increases the duration of revitalizers, which means more healing, more damage reduction, longer alacrity boost. And then before this goes off, since this isn't scale with alacrity anymore, you can hit this, and then right before, and I mean literally right before pugnacity or I guess stim boost falls off, if you reactivate this right here, you'll get the alacrity that you had previously, helping to lower the cooldown of this ability. So it is good to pop your second stim boost just before the first one's about to fall off, so you can get alacrity scaling with this ability, because it'll be 1 minute and 18 seconds versus 1 minute 26 seconds. It's not huge, but you can do it, so you should probably just take advantage of it. It's not hard to do. And for the most part, that's pretty much the bread and butter of lethality defenses, is stim boost and using stim boost with the reset to get this back up. Also, you have a reset on your absorb when you use hot streak slash actually, I don't even know what it's called on Republic. I just call it reset, you know. I think it's an obnoxious ability. I didn't actually expect it to stay in the game, but I suppose we're far past that now. They're probably not taking it away. So again, absorb slash defense screen, #1 priority, always use this on cooldown. This will give you damage reduction and % heal. This will give you alacrity, give you % health heal, and it'll also give you 20% defense, or not defense, but damage reduction. Sorry, I keep saying defense. And then this will just reset both of those, and it'll also reset Bushwhack. And if you really want to, this is a very fun tactical to use. I would recommend it in some situations, but not in every situation. Most of the time you want to have damage going, and I would tell you the damage is better. Toxic Haze heals any allies standing outside of it. So it takes about the same as a probe, and it takes 3 times. So if you have 4 allies in it, you're getting basically 3 probe ticks on them, which allows you to do decent HPS. A lot more decent HPS, I guess you can do, because you can already do a lot. Lethality can easily do 10k in arena. With that implant, it just makes it easier to do 10k. Now, again, evasion is a situational ability. Not very many classes actually do white damage. You're going to use it more as a purge, and or against things like sniper, using like, let's say, marksmanship, penetrating blast roots. Like you can completely cuck their damage and get away from all the root, because it constantly roots you, and you can just get completely away from that, which is popping evasion, which is super nice. I think that ability is super obnoxious, and I'm super glad that we can just do that, which is nice. Evasion, again, used to be more powerful, and that's mainly because white damage abilities did better. Not so much anymore, so it's definitely something that you'll just have all the time. They'll constantly get cooldown reduction if you're constantly taking damage. It's important to purge important dots that hurt really bad. For example, supercharged gas dots. For whatever reason, they don't seem to like trigger our passive. I don't know if this is a bug or if it's intentional, but we have 30% .dr, right? I know that's intentional, but what may not be intentional is the fact that supercharged gas seems to hit you the same whether you have damage reduction or not. But that's something that you might want to consider purging if you're taking a lot of damage from IO Merc. Then going into like the other part of like how it's played defensively. So for example, I'm on Powertech binds, so I'm not about hitting any click bind or any key binds. So we're just gonna click it. So for example, when I have probes on myself, this is very overpowered. I don't have all my gear, but being able to apply a probe every about like 16 seconds and just passively heal like this is very overpowered. No other class can do this. Resurgence doesn't come anywhere near close to how powerful this is. And the fact that I only need to do like 1 GCD every 16 seconds, which I hit the wrong keybind. T is normally my cult of probe. Unfortunately, this is my Powertech. Binds, I have it separate. And then when you roll, we have cult of back, which is just like an instant burst heal. That's super good. And the way to think of that, I would probably just go into my lethality guide. I have a crash course guide for this class. You can kind of like understand how to make use of all that. So probably for the sake of the link to the video, I won't go into that. I'll let you guys check that out. I'll link that in the description and basically keeping up your probes. So after you use this ability, I'll show you, not that you need to see it, but after you use your backstab, basically, you get this right here. This increases your HOTS. Your HOTS basically will do 30% more crit multiplier. So that means that you can heal for more. So even if you're not able to like get your AoE spread off, just use your backstab like pretty much all the time, and especially if you're off healing, you'll get a lot more HPS out of it. I also explained that in the Crash Course guide, so I'll definitely recommend check that out, and you can learn more about the healing part and more so how to play this class. And that's pretty much the basics of the defensives. There's nothing you can really do against this class. It's just this damage reduction is all types of damage reduction. So armor pin doesn't even matter. It's just very tanky. And not to mention, if they take this, for example, so you can see this, and I can stack this all the way up to 8 on this dummy. Even though it's just one person, I can stack this to 8. This does mean that I have to use Corrosive Grenade a little bit more. If there was 8 players, it would instant stack. Like, let's say if I hit 3 players twice, I'd be at 6 stacks, if that makes sense. And it's an AoE, and you already have to do that rotationally. So, look at this. I have a lot of damage reduction, not armor penetratable. Do I think this is fair? No. Not even remotely. This is an option, so if you're ever taking a lot of damage and you're not very good at the class and you want better survivability, this is something very good. So let's take this and we pop that off. So we're at 56% damage reduction, 46% yellow damage reduction. No other class is able to like maintain this much damage reduction in general, let alone be this tanky. Then there's the 20% from revitalizers. Doesn't show up here, but assume we're at like 50% again. It is utter insanity. I don't understand why that's even a choice. But typically the 20% is better. But, you know, if you're learning the class, I would recommend using the damage reduction, and that's super easy. And again, if you're playing against it, good luck, I guess. It's more so of a nuisance, and the best thing that you can do to really kill them is to constantly root them. Operative has always been vulnerable to that, constantly rooting them and trying to get a CC and kill them in a CC before they pop revitalizers. If they have revitalizers or pugnacity up, probably not going to kill them. And if they're not smart to constantly use Absorb, they're missing out on a lot of damage reduction, which means they're going to be easier to dispatch. If you have a lot of burst damage, you can still handle them, but just keep in mind if you're solo trying to kill them and they know how to play, you're going to have a lot harder time, especially if they're taking a damage reduction. Corrosive Grenade. And then now we're going to go into Concealment. Alright, well, I don't have a loadout for Concealment, but I'm going to explain the differences real quick. You will no longer get the damage reduction for using Absorb. It will no longer have 20% damage reduction on your stem boost. And overall, you're screwed. You don't have much percent health healing. You have probes, I guess. You don't get critical multiplier for your probes, so your probes don't heal that much. You can't roll and insta heal. You have to use a tactical advantage for that. And by the way, if you want to build a tactical advantage, you have to be relatively close to an enemy player to get a tactical advantage. So you got to put yourself in harm's way to use your only heal. That is worth a damn. So yeah. Losing revitalizers really hurt Concealment. Do I think they need it? Debatable. I think the class as a whole needs an overhaul, and I'm not going to get into that because this video is already going on for way too long. So the main things to take away is that you no longer have damage reduction on defense screen, so you're not able to face tank things. You don't have revitalizers, so you don't get the percent health heal, and you also don't get the damage reduction. So you're just not able to face tank things at all. You have to keep your probes up, so you'll pretty much all the time have your probes up. When you roll, you're pretty much immune to damage at all, like all damage, which is great. But it does mean that you'll have to rely on a lot of healing in general, and you'll have to roll aggressively and defensively, you know, like as you're doing your rotation to dodge stuff to not take as much damage, because somebody's able to like just rel into you. Your damage reduction just doesn't exist, and they will shred the living hell out of you. And you'll also have to time your evasion a little bit better, because obviously if you're going to roll, there's no point of using evasion. So if you're going against a white damage dealer and you don't want to roll, or it's not a good time to roll just yet, pop evasion. There's nothing too crazy about it. Again, same thing for concealment. Roots will get concealment killed very fast. So when you have a root on somebody, you can get a lot of damage on them. They can purge it, but they only have so many purges. So when they get rooted, follow them with a stun. They're pretty much screwed. They pretty much have to break because you can do so much damage to them because they basically have no damage reduction. Lethality is a completely different story, but concealment's not. Concealment is very squishy. They do a lot of burst damage though, but typically if you have literally anybody else, or if you have a lightning sorcerer or somebody else that can just hit them, they're just pretty much going to have an incredibly hard time doing anything. So I do highly recommend learning this class as lethality if you're going to play it, and then maybe branch into concealment. It's going to be a lot harder to do it the other way around. And other than that, that pretty much covers lethality and concealment, or I guess ruffian and scriber. We're going to go into another class now. We're going to move on to Sentinel. I believe the secondary class, Shadow, right? All right. So we'll do is Sentinel, Marauder, and then obviously I'll segment it for the next one. Anyways, going into this one, we're going to be first covering Carnage. Carnage is a little weird, so I might as well go to where we need to be. So I actually hit a dummy. First thing I want to get into is that this class is a medium armor user. Since we're a force user, we have the force panel, so just wait until this gets out of the way. Here we are. So we have 5% defense chance. Not great, but that's not what we're looking at. Right, my mouse does not work. All right, there we go. So we have 20.5% damage reduction. Perfect. And then we have 2% flat damage reduction, and then we also have 12% internal and elemental. That's pretty basic, but we're only playing Carnage. Carnage is a little bit different. Carnage just gets some damage reduction. There's like a passive right here. We get damage reduction that shows here. I'll show you real quick. Just let me do this. So let's go down to, what is it? Damage reduction here. Target that. So we're not going to look too crazy into this, but we've got our 3 stacks right. So you see how I have 8% and I have 18%. That's not great, but it's not terrible. So just doing damage as Carnage, you have that damage reduction, which is definitely nice. It doesn't last a crazy long time, but it doesn't last too short of a time. That's very nice. For example, like the leap DR is only 4 seconds for Vengeance. I think that's pretty bad, but you know, to each its own. Then we also have a thing that we can take here, which further increases our internal and elemental damage reduction to 15%. That's pretty good, and in any situation you don't need double leap, which this class is purely around mobility now. You usually do want double leap, so you're not getting like a crazy amount of damage reduction. This class is relatively squishy, so the way that it's going to play defensively is a lot different than most classes, and it's not necessarily the best choice that you should probably do in like group gameplay, but it's still very good. If you're going against like most of the meta specs, you're mostly just redirecting the damage to somebody else, and if you're not dispatching people fast enough, especially if you're in a outnumbered situation, you're going to have probably a lot of problems because somebody has to take the damage. So, for example, first thing we're going to get into, even though I don't think it says it, no, it does. Okay, it still does. When you're in camo, this is 6 seconds. You can still get scanned out, but when you're in this, you take 50% reduced damage. And when you pop predation, it would reset it, but then I have the tactical on, so you can't see that. I get 10% defense chance for predation. So this is really nice, right? Camo is a way to redirect damage. It'll cleanse you, so it'll purge roots. And obviously, if you get thermal detonator like thrown on you, you can go into camo and you can basically mitigate that thermal detonator pretty well, especially with thermal detonator doing a lot of damage. Your main defensive that you're going to use pretty much off the cooldown is Rebuke, which is Cloak of Pain. So when you pop this and anybody hits you, it'll refresh it for another 10 seconds. It can last no longer than 30 seconds. This is pretty good because it's 20% flat damage reduction. So it's about to fall off, but you saw it was 40% here. So it's just a flat 20%, can be armor penetrated, which is super nice. Now another thing that happens is that when we pop Saber Ward, we just get defense chance. You don't see any damage reduction happen. That's because it is, defense chance, but it has 25% yellow damage absorb. You can't really gauge how useful it is, but it is definitely useful against yellow damage. 25% absorb, not very high again, but it's not terrible. The cooldown, however, I would say on this ability is very terrible for how underwhelming it is, I guess you would say. You still get hit really hard through this ability all the time by yellow damage. And then also at the same time, if a white damage ability just goes through, you're not really having any damage reduction, so you're just going to get hit really hard by a white damage ability if it actually makes it through. And again, just to show you guys, Rebuke also gives internal and elemental damage reduction. So Rebuke is your best defensive. It's like shield. So do keep that in mind. It's just a little bit better. That's your main defensive. And if nobody's hitting you, it will fall off early and you're kind of screwed. So it's an ability that you need people to constantly hit you or hit you within 10 seconds. This spec is very, very simple, very straightforward. Obviously you can take say Mad Dash. I like Mad Dash. Mobility is king in regs. So we've got Mad Dash. During the Mad Dash, you are basically at 100% defense chance, which means you can dodge anything. However, some things with desync and whatnot will cause you still to get hit by it. So take that with a grain of salt. It's not the best or most reliable ability in the game. Along with Jet Out, and we all know how bad Jet Out is. So going into Undying Rage is a really good one. Probably something you will definitely take in solo ranked, depending on what kind of matchup you have. If you're actually ever going to be a target, you want to have Undying, but if you're never going to be a target and you need mobility to stay on a target and get a target to die sooner, Mad Dash is going to be the go-to. But Undying Rage, basically, you pop it, 2 minute, 3 second cooldown, 6 seconds of basically damage immunity. Things will still hurt you, and they'll still hurt you a decent amount. So for example, IO Supercharged Gas, with like their auto attack and like all their dots taking all at the same time, you'll still lose quite a bit of health. So do keep in mind that if you use this too low, you're a goner, especially if there's a lot of dots. It'll still shred you. So it is definitely something that you should be using during a burst window to avoid burst. Now we'll go into Fury, because Fury is the meta spec, and combat is not very much different than Fury, but we'll make some main like differences here. So for example, we get defense chance. I think it's right here. Yeah, so you get 10% defense chance for 6 seconds after using Fury Strike. You'll have, I want to say Fury Strike pretty much almost every 6 seconds. You can permanently pretty much keep that up. I'm pretty sure there's no internal like downtime on that. Yeah, there's no internal downtime on that. So you can basically always keep that defense chance up. And then you have another 10% here. So against other white damage dealers, you'll have, was it 20% defense chance for most of the time? Or I guess, 25% defense chance. That's pretty damn good. I want to say that right now. That's pretty damn good. Just being able to have that all the time. Obviously, you only have 5% base, but just rotationally, you'll always have an extra 10%. So that's more than most specs. And then obviously, you have the same choices of Undying and stuff like that. Then you also have this ability right here. So whenever you pop Obliterate or Zillow Sleep, you'll be able to absorb about 13,000 damage. That's nothing to laugh about. It's pretty decent. You're not able to spam this, but let's say you use, like you have a perfect rotation and nobody's like really killing you. This thing doesn't go away. So if you reapply it before it falls off, I don't believe like the chance to absorb goes away, but you can stack it. And especially if you're parsing with this, you can stack this and it'll make your character just like radiate a giant blue blob, which is hilarious. This is totally off topic, but I think this is like just absolutely hilarious that you can do this. I'm pretty sure the damage reduction does not stack, so it's still only at 13,000 absorb, but it's pretty cool to look at. And then we have CC immunity on gravity, vortex, and AoE DR. AoE DR is not as important, but we'll lose our double leap in order to take our CC immunity. This definitely sucks. Don't like this change. And the fact that, Carnage got it baked into their kit instead of having to pick a talent is a little weird, but it is a way that they can nerf Fury because it definitely is performing really well. And that's pretty much for the defenses. But basically, when it comes to playing arena and regs, is that you want to use your lowest cooldowns first. And what are our lowest cooldowns? Our lowest cooldowns are Camo and Rebuke. Longest cooldowns are going to be Saber Ward and Undying. Ignore that we're using Mad Dash right now. So basically what you would do in an arena is to go in and use Rebuke, and if like you're semi a target, maybe pop a Journal. You sometimes want to save your med pack, but you never want to get really low to the point under 50%. And I wouldn't necessarily use your med pack, but before you hit 50%, definitely use your camo and your predation and go and try the combat reset. You'll still have your Saber Ward, you'll still have your Undying, you'll probably still have your med pack, maybe use your Journal, but don't like go and use all your defenses all at the same time unless you absolutely have to and you have to kill somebody. If your team's not like hurting for damage or hurting for you to always be there, it's better for you to mitigate slowly through like Rebuke and other abilities and then go and reset. If anybody tries to chase you, this is the biggest perk of what I'm talking about here. If anybody goes to chase you, not only will you have probably Predation and your second camo, you'll have Saber Ward and Undying and your med pack. So chances are if somebody does find you, which by the way, don't use your breaker. You definitely want to have your breaker for, like, let's say an assassin opening up on you while you're trying to regen. Try not to use your breaker in the opener. Obviously, you have CC immunity available to you, so try to take advantage of that. And you don't always have to necessarily heal to full, so do keep that in mind. It's more so about spreading out their team, especially if somebody goes to chase you. If nobody's chasing you, then, you know, just understand how to actually get out of combat by going the furthest distance you can from the fight. Even if it's like right in the open, you're going to get out of combat faster, you're going to get some ticks to regen, and then just go back in. And then, since if somebody does come and chase you, you're going to have probably better defenses than them. If not, you're going to have good enough defensives to then try to camo out and get another stuff out and heal, which is buying a lot of time for your team, or you can go back to your team. It's a variable of a lot of situations, but basically you're centered around using your lowest defenses constantly and only using your longer defenses like Saber Ward and Undying and Medpack in situations where you absolutely have to. Other than that, you pretty much just get the PvE parse on people because they can't really afford to go you, and sometimes it's storing to go you. So definitely learn how to do damage. It'll definitely increase your success for arena. And then for regs, I do not recommend using Undying. You can use it, but with double camo, which I recommend double camo, especially playing Fury, is to just constantly be in like the background and fighting like the squishier targets or the targets that are not going to be a massive threat for you. So like Powertech Vanguard, you probably don't want to fight those guys. So just probably keep your space and use your camo to just make it really hard for people to stick on you, and basically use it as a threat trap so people give up on trying to hit you and hit people that you're good at hitting. So for example, sorcerers. And if the enemy team has a lot of backline, you're going to be running into a situation where you need to play a little bit more frontline, but also you can use your camo aggressively and defensively, or just for mobility. It really just depends. This class is like quite literally one of the most mobile options that you can play. So if you use that, and you'll be able to see a lot better success rather than trying to mitigate everything by just fasting it. Camo is very, very powerful. And as for dealing with this class, I would say just try to do effective damage to it and force it to run away. The longer it's not there, basically, if you force it out and let's say it goes to regen, just try to take advantage of that time when you have a numbers advantage. If you can't take advantage of that time, somebody needs to chase after them. Like, you just chase after them, commit to them. Just as like every other class, CC is very important. I do have a video showcasing all the CC immunities in Star Wars, and I would recommend watching that so you can understand what CC immunities this class has, and then you can see like, oh, he's CC immune right now, so I can't CC him. so you don't end up wasting it, because there's 2 different CC immunities available for Fury. One's with Saber Word, the other one's with Force Gravity, or Gravity Vortex, or Force Crush, or was it Force Exhaustion, whatever. Those 2, they don't look completely the same, but it's something you should keep in mind. And then, obviously, double camo thing makes it really hard to make them a priority target, but not impossible. Especially on smaller maps, it's a lot easier to deal with. Saber Word, again, first 6 seconds, you're CC immune, but afterwards you can stun them, and I recommend stunning them then, because then they only have 25% yellow damage absorb. If they have Cloak of Pain, it doesn't really matter, you can kind of like tunnel through it, but if you're able to stop attacking them for, let's say, 10 seconds, it'll fall off. But I mean, typically, you'd probably just go through it. And again, the main defensive is just to camo out. There's nothing too crazy about the class. Undying Rage, there's nothing you can do about it. So it's more so about, hey, eventually this person's going to be out of cooldowns, and hey, Cloak is only so useful. I mean, like, where is he going to run away? Is he going to run away? Well, he runs away. What can you do about it? Obviously, in Arena, you'd be chasing them, but in Regs, there's not much point to chase after them. So just use the numbers advantage. And lastly, we'll cover Annihilation. There's only like 1 difference. So the main perks of playing Annihilation is that you get percent health heal, which will allow you to heal quite a bit. But also, if you're playing this spec, you're probably wanting to run Undying over Mad Dash. Mad Dash is nice, but you're more so like cleaving AoE or sustained damage. You're not really like able to chase down people and just assassinate them like the counterparts to your other 2 specs. So you're in a situation where you want to duel and you want to be durable, and having Undying Rage will allow you to be able to do that. Especially if you run into like APPT, you can just undie most of their damage and the rest of the burst window, for example. The main difference is that with the percent healing, this talent right here becomes way more useful than usual, because this stacks with your percent healing. So you're getting like double percent healing, which actually ends up being some pretty decent self-healing. And for the most part, there's not like really anything crazy about the spec. It's pretty much all damage bonuses and whatnot. I do believe you have like some base DR through sorry, there's like a passive that gave you DR, but I guess I don't remember anymore. But for overall, like, it's not that strong. Just like Carnage's is not that strong. It's really just the healing. So if you're playing like double camo, for example, if you put dots on somebody in your camo, you can get a decent amount of heal in the camo and come back out, and you can kind of like buy time. It's a weird way to play, but that's like the main difference. Overall, not that crazy of a spec, or I guess class, to deal with. All right. Now we're going to go over probably one of the real true class cannons available in this game. Serenity and Infiltration, which is Deception and Hatred, covering Shadow, Assassin. So the main thing to take away here is that you do have some self-healing, which is nice, but there's a passive that allows your AoE taunt to give you 15% damage reduction when you use it. I don't know if it's listed here, and it doesn't seem to be listed there. It doesn't list on your mass mind control either, which is super weird. I hate when passives like that are just like so buried into your class, and like nobody's going to ever be able to find it. Because I mean, to be honest, who reads this stuff besides like, you know, me and a couple other people? A lot of people usually don't read this stuff, so they just never even know about it. But it's been like part of the kit for a very long time that you have damage reduction. So can I use my AoE taunt with a regular lightsaber? Yes, I can. So when I pop this, it says damage reduction increase. This is 15% damage reduction for the duration of my AoE taunt. That's the main damage reduction you get as a spec, and that's about it. This also means if people are already hitting you and somebody else can taunt for you, guess what happens? Your taunt overlaps theirs. So therefore, it's not necessarily even worth it for you to use AoE taunt, because the 30% damage reduction of somebody else taunting is better than what you would get for the 15% for only 6 seconds. So keep that in mind. It's a good defensive if nobody else can taunt with you, somebody else can taunt for you, then it's necessarily not great unless they can overlap your taunt immediately. So for example, if you AoE taunt, then somebody else AoE taunts, then you get value out of it. However, just remember taunts overlap, and I'll talk about taunts and how to use taunts correctly later on in the video. So for example, we have armor, right? Armor rating. We have 15% damage reduction, not great. And then we have 10% internal and elemental, 10% defense chance. So I pop AoE taunt. This goes up a considerable amount, right? This is actually 30%. No, I'm tripping, right? No. Maybe it's 30%. I swear, man, like, what did I just see? Yeah, no, I'm tripping. That's 30%. Weird. 30% is definitely better than 15%. I swear it was 15%, but I guess that might have been deception. Deception ended up actually losing that, by the way. So 30% damage reduction. Okay, so retract my previous statement. It's still very good, but it would be way better if somebody was able to AoE taunt after you use your AoE taunt, because then you're taking technically 60% less damage, which makes it a way, way, way better defensive. So do keep that in mind. That's like your main defensive. Then you have this. This is CC immunity for the first 6 seconds, which is nice. But afterwards, it's not great. People are probably going to stun you through it, especially if they do white damage, because they want to get their white damage to actually hit. You're very squishy. It doesn't have the 25% yellow damage absorb. It's only got the 50% defense chance. So it's not great. It is 1 minute lower cooldown, which is nice. And then you have resilience or force shroud. This basically gives you complete immunity to yellow damage for the duration. And when you stealth out, you can also have it. I like to run mobility a little bit more, but obviously you would take this, especially in arena. This would be pretty much standard to take these two. With immersion, sometimes you can get away with not using this, but there's really no reason to not use it. I'm using this just because I want more uptime on it. However, you're pretty much always taking this. There's really no reason to not take this, because you can get a lot of value out of this. And then you have your AoE DR potential, but the CC immunity is just so much better. We don't really worry about these because these don't really add to your survivability overall. Do keep in mind about this ability when you stealth out and you use force speed. This has the AoE slow, so this will put you back in combat, which is really weird for hatred. So sometimes you might actually just want to take the knock as hatred in an arena. Where you can take this, it's not great. It's very force hungry if you don't have dots on somebody. So I'm not really sure why it's tied to that ability. It should be tied to literally anything else like demolish. But hey, they could have just left spike in the game. Anyway, this spec, not very durable, not very great. Your AoE taunt is good, but that's literally all you have. And we'll go into deception now. Deception is a little bit different. So the main difference that you'll see here is that you can take this, which gives you increased damage reduction, 5% per stack, so you get 10% extra damage reduction. And it also slows the target, not great, but the crit chance is also really nice too. So it's really just how you want to play. I prefer the crit chance, but sometimes the DR from this is definitely worth it. Plus having the slow is actually very helpful, because if you have to give up, like let's say you're giving up this or you're giving up this up here, your ability hurts a little bit. So having a slow is better than nothing. This is way more usable because it's tied to maul, which is nice. So you get extra 10% damage reduction. It's not, I don't have gear on, so let me put gear on again. Not full gear, but at least you'll see my armor rating. So I've got the 10% damage reduction. Let me pull one of these guys out. Am I not able to use that? Oh yeah, so it's a dual saber. Okay, so I'm not even able to show you. Let me grab a dual saber real quick. That will just solve our problem. So apologies about this. Your AoE taunt doesn't give you damage reduction like hatred does, so it's definitely way more vulnerable, but you have a lot more CC, which is helpful, and your burst not AoE or dot focus, so that's a little different. So we'll go to gear, we'll go here and we'll look at our damage reduction. So when I use this and I use it the second time, I have 30% damage reduction. So that's 29% yellow damage reduction at pretty much all times. That's pretty good. And then I have 15% armor penetratable damage reduction from white damage and 19% basically permanent damage reduction that isn't going to go away. Being able to keep that up is incredibly easy. That's a decent amount of damage reduction, but it's not great. It is a talent that I feel like shouldn't exist, that should just probably be built into the spec to probably make it a little bit better. But I do think defensives should just be a little bit more valuable, but I would not be opposed to this just being consumed and being part of the spec as a whole. It would definitely help them. Also, outside of that, we're talking about the biggest offender for this class and why it's hard for them to balance this class. Where is it? This ankle right here. First look has 2 charges, and then we also have an implant here. After Phantom Strike while you're in stealth, it gives you 100% crit window. Where is it? Here. So this. So being able to have 2 cloaks plus this implant makes you an incredible powerhouse in your opener. And you can also have Shroud on your stealth out. So your opener is basically kind of unstoppable, and it is crazy strong. So it really puts them in a weird situation for balancing this class. I think, if anything, double cloak. I don't like it, but one thing they could do for double cloak is add a negative effect to double cloak. So when they use their cloak out, it doesn't reset their Shadow Stride anymore. So they have to wait until Shadow Stride actually comes back up. So they're not able to aggressively dump their cloaks in the opener, which is one of the main issues currently. And that would help them a lot, and not have this class get gutted further. That's a huge concern. Huge concern. This class is definitely one of the squishiest. It has taunts, which is nice, but when people are taunting you anyway, taunts aren't going to help you. So damage reduction, not really available. You have the dodge chance, which is nice for white damage, and then you have the pure resist for yellow damage, which doesn't last very long. It's better than nothing, but that's about it. The spec is definitely needs some help, and it's definitely probably the shortest one because there's not really much options you have, and it really sucks. Obviously, you'll take the CC immunity, and overall for playing against this spec, when it stealths out, if it's taking the Shroud out, basically what happens there is that it's only immune to yellow damage. So if you use Suppressive Fire, or you use Sweeping Slash, or other white damage AoE abilities, you'll be able to pull them out, especially if you know where they're going. So 100% get used to doing that. You can Mad Dash, you can Sweeping Slash, Suppressive Fire. I think there's a couple other like white damage abilities that you can use that are 100% worth doing to pull them out. You'll see Lacerate a lot. You'll see this a lot when another assassin stealths, and chances are you probably catch them with that, especially if they got slowed for some reason, or slow persisted through stealth out, or they just got stuck. Sometimes it does happen. Sometimes people are not very fast at running away immediately as they stealth out, so you can get them out immediately. And pretty much after that, it's not hard to do damage to this class, so I don't really think anybody has too many problems dealing with this class other than its opener and its like immunity periods. Its opener is really front loaded because it can reset its Phantom Stride with its cloak out, and since it has 2 cloaks, it can just kind of front load its damage with another class that's able to do a lot of burst, and then it creates a lead from that point, and it becomes safer to play from that point on. That is a very aggressive playstyle that mainly gets rewarded in Arena. It can work in Regs. You can spiral the whole time if you guys have enough damage, which is nice, but it's not always going to be the case. It's a very squishy class, so if you're able to immune their damage or just get away from them, just kite them for the first few seconds when they open, they become way easier to deal with. Again, we're not going over tanks, so I won't be going over tanks. That's pretty much it for this class. If you have any questions, again, feel free to ask. This class is definitely the shortest, mostly because their defenses are just not that good. Alright, now we're going to cover Juggernaut and Guardian. So basically what happens here, we're going to talk about Vengeance first. First thing I want to get out of the way so you guys know what it looks like. And the sound, basically this is just something that you need to know. This animation right here means immunity to CC for 4 seconds. It also means 20% damage reduction. Very, very good. And then there's also a talent, I think, here, right? Or maybe I'm wrong. Or yeah, talent right here. If you take this talent, you can't be pushed or pulled, so you can get knocked. Also gives them heal immediately, but you're usually not going to take this as vengeance, but you can take it as vengeance. It's just heals up all the time, so you don't really need that. The main reason you'd be taking it is to avoid the knock and pull. So Vengeance Juggernaut's probably not taking that, and that means you can knock and push and pull them after they leap. But it does mean that they do have 20% damage reduction and CC immunity for like the opener there. So that's the number one thing that we need to get out of the way, and for Vengeance, that is the bread and butter. You don't have very much damage reduction available for you to like actually use. So you have Endure Pain. This will give you 15% damage reduction for the duration. It doesn't show over here, but it does show on the tooltip here. Damage reduction by 15% for 10 seconds, and remove cleansable effects. When the effect ends, the health is lost. So this is a double-bladed defensive. This is a low cooldown. If you're not taking like a massive amount of damage, you can kind of get away with using it early. But do keep in mind that this ability will probably kill you, and it takes quite a bit of time to understand how to use it properly. It's usually a last-ditch effort. The main concept of using it is when you're about to die or you're getting close to dying, popping Endure Pain plus Med Pack will give you a good boost of health, and when Endure Pain probably falls off, if you're taking a lot of damage during that window, you're probably going to die afterwards. So that's something that you should keep in mind. And there's another thing that also helps with your durability by a lot is taking this Bloodbound. When you got a lot of dots on people, you can heal up for almost 20%. So during Endure Pain, if you hit Blood Rage and you heal for that 20% during Endure Pain, you're able to live a lot longer and even potentially survive through Endure Pain. Like Endure Pain won't actually kill you. So you can actually just survive way better now that we have that extra 20% heal, which means that 20% heal is based on your HP. So if you have, if you have more HP in general, like 400, 500k, full gear, you're then able to heal for a lot more from that 20%, which is a win-win situation. Just like Marauder's Saber Ward, we have 20% yellow damage absorb, and that's just base defense chance in the first second or 2 seconds. You get Blade Turning, which is 100% defense chance for the first 2 seconds, and that's just 50% from there. You can get CC'd at any moment during this ability, so it is good to try to pair it with something like Leap, so you get the 4 seconds of CC immunity, and pair it with the opener of that, and you basically don't take damage from light damage, but you'll still have only 25% yellow absorb. Then you do have Mad Dash, which is nice, just like Marauder, like I said, for that class. And then we have Reflect. It's a 5-second Reflect, but the damage is capped, so it's not that great. So damage done by use Reflect is capped. It says it right there. In PvP, it is capped way harder than PvE, so that's unfortunate. I don't know why it's still capped in PvP, considering we've got 150% Reflect for Operative, class that didn't even have Reflect from the beginning of the game. The only Reflect that used to be in this game was Saber Reflect. I don't know what's up with that, but that's a thing. Obviously, this just gives basic cooldown reduction for rage defense and stuff like that. There's nothing too crazy in this tree except for Warmonger. Warmonger is pretty much mandatory. This is the bread and butter. Force Charge is very important. This is how you survive. This is how you get damage reduction. For example, this is where it is. It's called Brawn. Additionally, during this time, damage reduction is increased by 20%. It also gives you channel immunity, which is weird, which means that you can definitely channel mods and OPG after you leap as Vengeance if you wanted to do that. Kind of funny. A lot of people forget that the channel immunity is still there. But overall, like, class, not complicated, super easy. Things to think about when you're using your defenses. For example, if you're not taking Mad Dash, which is a personal preference, do you want the Reflect or do you want the Mad Dash? It's debatable on what's better. It really just depends on what you're against. If you're able to, for example, reflect very good burst windows, Reflect will be better. But if you're able to get more leaps and Mad Dash, good damage windows, Mad Dash will be a little bit better because then you can get back into a free leap pretty much. So it's debatable. Both of them are pretty good in Arena. So basically the first thing that you want to think about when you're playing Vengeance in Arena, And if you can ever get cleave, then the combat focused heal is going to be a lot better. But if you're not getting cleave, it's a completely different story. This is where the spec really starts to get really messy. So you can take things like Nimble Master, which will give you 100% movement speed during Saber Word. This will help you kite a lot more. Hue will apply a slow. So when you're kiting, your hue is something that you should definitely use on the person that's chasing after you because you can slow them. But typically, the main way for you to receive damage reduction is not only being particularly smart about how you use your leap, but constantly using your leap. Your leap is your main damage reduction that you're going to get. It's 20% for 4 seconds. I wish it was 6 seconds or even 8 seconds. It would make this class completely different. The CC immunity doesn't need to be that long. Obviously, that would be obnoxious. But a damage reduction being a little bit longer would help a lot. And it would allow the class to be a little bit more durable. Its name is Juggernaut, but it's more like Poodle with vicious bark. So going into like defensive rotation, what you would do is always leap all the time. Just keep leaping, don't stop leaping. Leaping is what will help you stay alive. And then you have things like Endure Pain and Enraged Defense, and really depending on how much damage you're taking or how much damage an opener is going to happen, you're probably going to want to pop Reflect or Mad Dash early to avoid some of the bursts, but that burst is going to come no matter what, pretty much from certain specs like AP. If you Mad Dash it and you only Mad Dash TD, that energy burst is still coming. Even if you resist it, it's still coming. If you have Reflect, it'll actually go into the Reflect, so that's a case for Reflect. Then you probably will open with trying to keep your CC immunity up with Saber Ward. You don't really want to use Saber Ward and just immediately get stunned because then it's pointless. So do keep in mind that you want to try and tie your Saber Ward with your leap. And since you don't get any damage reduction with your enraged defense, you can die through it. So if somebody was to hit you harder than what you would heal for, you'll die through enraged defense, which is a really tricky situation if you're going against classes that don't multi-hit. They just do one ability and it hits really hard. That becomes very dangerous about using this, and you'll have to use it a little bit sooner so you don't die through it. So this will be one of the first things that goes. It'll be a 1:30 cooldown if you take the talent. I'm not taking the talent, but it'll be a 1:30. So it's usually the first thing that you'll most of the time use, not always, but most of the time you will. And it'd be like Saber Ward into EDE with a general so you don't die through it. And then last ditch is probably Endure Pain into Medpack, and then try to use your combat focus to also get a 20% heal pretty much every single time it's available. It's better during Endure Pain, obviously. But that overall won't always be the case. So it's a weird situation. You'll be more interested in learning how to kite as the class than actually trying to do damage, but you should also try to do damage as you go. This spec can definitely work, and sometimes it'll be a liability. You never want to be a liability, but unfortunately sometimes that's just the way it goes. So you've got one of the most powerful abilities in the game called Intercede. There's less and less of these abilities now in this expansion. Sorcerer Pool used to apply damage reduction, doesn't do that anymore. So this is one of the only abilities that you can actively just apply damage reduction to somebody. Not only does it do that, it also gives you a way to like gap close to your teammates, meaning that you can use this to get away from enemies, but also support your ally or just get to a better position, which allows you to kite better or set up for an easy leap yet again. And you'll really have to make use of all your tools to try to get your leaps, so it's definitely something that you're going to have to learn. So for example, if I hit my caps lock, which is rebound to target nearest ally, so I can use Intercedes very quick and then immediately hit tab and I target somebody again, so I can jump to them. You need to be able to quickly intercede to people to then get your leap back, so you can have 20% damage reduction and CC immunity once again. Leaping constantly on cooldown is what's going to make the difference of being able to survive or not being able to survive, and or a good Vengeance Juggernaut and a bad Vengeance Juggernaut, my bad. In Arena, this is way more important, but obviously this applies to Regs. It's very, very important in Regs too. It's just in Regs, like if you ever get the chance to slam spam, that's probably why you're playing the spec. Let's be real, you just want to slam. In that situation, you want to prioritize just trying to get as many slams as you can, and try to make use of using Endure Pain and your combat focus or Blood Rage to constantly just continuously healing you. So much so to the point in cleave situations, Endure Pain is no longer a negative ability. The 20% heal that you constantly get from combat focus / Blood Rage will basically counteract the negative effect of Endure Pain. So this means that you'll have a 15% damage reduction plus way more health pool, and you'll be able to use that and then that and just constantly keep slamming and slamming and slamming. And Endure Pain will no longer be that bad of an ability for you to use, which is huge. It definitely helps you in cleave situations. Obviously, if you're still dying in cleave like really fast, probably don't do that. But if you ever get away with a situation like that where you can just leap in, you don't have to leap constantly, I would highly recommend using Endure Pain first with combat focus. Combat focus would be your #1 defensive for the 20% heal, and then bleep obviously for the 20% damage reduction, 4 seconds CC immunity. Those two, #1 priority, and then you can use like a Endure Pain to get the damage reduction, rolling and extra health, and then get the extra heal from the 20% heal from combat focus and Blood Rage. And then, like, let's say you're taking a lot of wide damage, you'll probably then want to prioritize Saber Ward, and you can use Saber Ward with Endure Pain if you ever get in a bad situation where people are starting to do a lot of damage to you. Obviously, last ditch using these two with Endure Pain, or use Warzone Adrenal at any point. It's really just up to you. Let's say that you're taking damage from a Vanguard. If you can ever get a leap away from the Vanguard, I would highly recommend doing that, maybe popping a Journal. That'll give you a decent amount of damage reduction for windows. If you're not taking Mad Dash, for example, you can reflect Thermal Dat. I'd highly recommend doing that, and then leaping, like, if you can't, like, what do you call it? If you can't reflect it, leap and pop a Journal. That'd be a good time to use those two together, because then the thermal doesn't do that much. It really just depends. And in situations that you're going against a lot of sorcerers, for example, reflect is super good against Stormwatch. I highly recommend that be like one of the main times that you would take it. But generally in Rex, Mad Dash is just going to be better. So it really just depends. You want to slam, can't slam. Really just depends on how you're going to have to play your defensive priority. So usually your defensive priority is probably going to be using a Rage first, because, you know, it's going to be a minute, 30 seconds. I'm taking random talents at the moment. So you'll have this up more often, and you'll just use this, and then you'll use this as like a last ditch before you die. So you'll be like a Rage defense, and then use the heal from this, and then pop Saber Ward, or pop Saber Ward with Rage defense, and then use Endure Pain into Warzone Med Pack. And you can obviously use Warzone Adrenal in between the times that you don't have Leap DR. It's also a completely viable option. It's really, again, situational, as you do have DR, but it's not great DR. And when it's used together, it's way better, but that also means that you're not able to spread for longer, but your healing is only so good if you have damage reduction, but you don't have crazy amount of like damage reduction available for you. So as long as you keep that in mind, that's really good. Now we're going to go into Rage, and this is where stuff gets a little sad, I would say. Where is it? I think it's this. No. It's somewhere in here. Let me see. Not that one. Not that one. Here it is. Okay, activating Raging Burst or Smash increases your damage reduction for 10% for 6 seconds. This cannot happen more than every 8 seconds. That's fine. I don't know why there's a lockout, but hey, that's a thing. 10% is nothing. This could definitely get buffed to 20%, and this class would still be relatively squishy. It'd be less squishy, but it'd still be relatively squishy. This is your only damage reduction. Enjoy. It's pretty bad, but the nice thing is that you can definitely afford War Master a lot better, because your Vicious Throw is gonna chunk people. So this is way more reasonable to take, because he was always up in Vengeance that you don't necessarily need to take it. But this is a huge amp for your damage, but obviously having a 10% heal on your Unleash and having Unleash more often is nice. But let's be real, this spec is doomed to die, so just try to get as much damage as you can out. You do have the mini ward absorb. That's pretty nice. But overall, it's pretty much the same options as Vengeance. It's no different. Your Leap doesn't give you damage reduction. You get damage reduction from using your Raging Burst or Smash, which is only 10%. Not great. Doesn't last for very long. And your Intercede does get you out of roots. Unfortunately, you don't get the reduced cooldown on Intercede anymore. Rage used to get a passive that gave them reduced cooldown on Intercede, which made it even better. But now that's not a thing. I don't know why that's not a thing. That should really go back to being a thing. But that is just something to keep in mind. Pretty much the same priority. Since you don't have damage reduction, you're probably going to make sure that you pop something with Enraged Defense so you don't die through it. Whether it's a Saber Ward or a General, you're going to make sure that you definitely do that. Because if you die through Enraged Defense, you're not really making an impact. I'm going to be honest with you. And Endure Pain. Difference with Endure Pain for Rage is that you also do not get the damage reduction in Rage either. So this means this ability is even worse than Rage, which you would think it would be better in Rage, but or at least somewhat useful in Rage. It's literally last ditch. You would pop this with Bedvac to like heal up. In Arena, the best perks of like Rage is that you can do some burst and you can like kind of like try to cut away, but for the most part, this class is a sitting duck. It doesn't have crazy like damage reduction. It has like virtually no damage reduction, just a 10%. And it only lasts for 6 seconds and can fall off because it's got a 8-second internal timer. And it also implies that people actually are able to fight back on this class, because usually within one white bar, you're probably going through most of your defenses unless you have a decent team to back you up. The cool thing is that the class can do a lot of damage, but it takes a lot of damage. Not a crazy class to deal with either. The main thing I would recommend is if they are taking Reflect, be a little bit careful about using abilities that can be reflected, so maybe stun them before that. And also, for the most part, for Vengeance, it's more so about a DPS race. And if somebody uses Enraged Defense, if you don't have CC to CC it out, or if you don't think that'll ever happen, if they use Enraged Defense, just auto-attack into them. It'll proc every single tick of their ED, and they'll be full healed. And then their ED is no longer there. You can immediately start chunking them down again. Because if you hit an ability in there, it'll trade for the heal, and they'll still have heal stacks left. If you just auto-attack into it, it'll insta-heal them to full, and they'll have no more ticks left, and bam. You can immediately start hitting them again. Or not hitting again, but hurting them again. So 100% recommend doing that. If you're ever dealing with ED, just insta-full them, and then just delete their health bar again. Very easy class to deal with, and sadly, Enraged Defense should probably get reworked. Being able to just auto attack into it, and it's the full HP them, and just pick out the health bar again in like mere seconds. It's pretty sad. It's a Juggernaut, but it's definitely not a Juggernaut. It's a really weird situation. Overall, class is pretty easy to deal with, and also at the same time, it's really awkward to like make the most of your damage reduction, but it's not incredibly hard. And we'll go into the next class now. Alright, now we're going to go into the range classes, starting with Sorcerer. This is going to have a little bit more, as it has options, which is not that the other classes don't have options. This class definitely has more. So there's a couple of options that you can take. You can take Aaron's Haze, you can take Stormwatch, you can take, what's the other one? Elemental Confection, but Elemental Confection is probably more useful in Rigs, less so useful in Arena. Then we also have a lockout thing that we can take instead of Tempest of Pro for this one. There's also, what's it, Instant Cast, Leeching Strike or whatever this thing is called. What's it called? Force Leech. I don't have all the tacticals for this class because I don't really thoroughly enjoy it anymore. I miss the days of it having Dark Infusion, a big, long casted version of this. That was a lot better. It's been like 3 expansions now that this Dark Heal has done pretty much the same healing, and I don't really like that. So I miss when the class was able to heal more of the damage rather than just have mitigation for the damage and then rely on like somebody actually healing them. I miss its self-healing capability. Well, now it's in the update, Madness is going to have better self-healing, which is great. This class can already face things pretty well. So I'm going to give you guys an example Real quick, before we get into the spec, we have a passive which makes this very good, called Corrupted Defense. It gives us 5% defense chance, but damage reduction is actually 3 times, lasts for 10 seconds. This is just getting a critical hit. We also have Suppression, which is a standard 25%, usable whenever you want it, and on top of that, it lasts for 60 seconds, cooldown 45 seconds. That's pretty good. Right? So let's look at our damage reduction already. Excuse my stats again. Not optimized because I was playing something else. We had the basic 15% and 10% internal and elemental. So let's get just some of our stacks real quick. So we probably should be on our full stacks, I think. Yeah, no, we're at 2 stacks. So we need 1 more stack. All right, so now we have 3 stacks. So this puts us at basically 15% extra. So we've got 15% armor penetratable damage reduction and 15% flat damage reduction that can't be penetrated. And then we have just 25% internal and elemental damage reduction, which is pretty good. That's not bad. It's not great. It's not insane. Definitely pretty good. Definitely helps Madness a lot. But here's another thing. So when I pop Resurgence, I get armor rating. And from that armor rating, I gain some damage reduction. With that damage reduction, which is easy to keep up, by the way, I'm going to let it fall off here so you guys can see the difference. So you have 15% all the way to 18.7. That's pretty good. Now, this is only applicable to white damage, though, so do keep that in mind. So against white damage, keeping your Resurgence up pretty much all the time, not only for self-HPS, it's very good. And then there's another thing is that you get percent health heal while you have Static Barrier up, so you're healing for a lot with Static Barrier. Combine that with Resurgence, you're getting a lot of good self-healing, plus your dots giving you self-healing. This allows you to face tank a lot of the situations when you're getting hit by, like, let's say, an Arsenal Merc. You can just face tank it, and you can just DPS them back. You're getting quite a bit of damage reduction there, and then you have the 15% extra, so you're looking at way more damage reduction than what you actually see here. So for example, let's just give you a demonstration. So I'll need to get 3 crits. I'll just pop Recklessness to make it faster. So we've got it, and then what we'll do here is hit Resurgence. So we got 30, and then we do this. We're at 33% damage reduction. Not bad, not terrible. Can face tank a little bit, and here we'll give you a showcase of like the healing. Even though I don't have proper gear on, this will be relatively decent healing, and you see how easy it is to keep up. And they're going to increase the self-healing. So there's quite a bit of self-healing that you'll have access to, you'll be able to use. Obviously, your Static Barrier will get popped, so it won't be that great. So that's one thing that you keep in mind of for damage reduction and self-mitigating. Damage reduction plus HPS means that the damage reduction is better, or you can make more use of it. So that's one thing to keep in mind about for this spec. It's a little bit better in the self-healing department than what it used to be. I enjoy that thoroughly because I like when if you're managing your things well, self-healing is actually rewarded. So that's the basic damage reduction for Madness. It's pretty much uptime permanent. As long as you're constantly having dots on people, you'll pretty much always have this. Suppression is something that you would just use whenever you're taking a burst window. Unless you're not taking it, you take the other 2. This one is currently bugged, and the increases lifesteal by 50%. It's only applicable to the Death Field, I believe, or Death Brand, which is not bad, but overall, the main reason most people are taking this is because it applies a slow. It doesn't say that it applies a slow, but it does. And it has a 50% chance here to reapply. And there's no hinder rate on how many times it can reapply. So it can reapply to people after they've died and spawn and trap them in spawn. I have a couple videos on this. It's very annoying. I don't understand how this has still not been changed. Overall, this ability is not great, but it's not terrible. Personally, the main use of it is not breaking CC, but also just having a single target potential rotation for more damage versus the AoE spread that you normally have, which is interesting, but the spec is just not really around single target, so it's not bad. I like the idea of having dot explosion and stuff like that, making a dot AoE spec into a single target DPS. Feels weird to me, but it's cool. And having the opportunity to do it is nice. And then you also have here, 3% damage reduction. Not terrible, but you can't really afford it, so I usually end up taking this. As a Madness Sorcerer, you can more so afford giving up Force Leech for Defiance, because you have to stand still a lot anyway. So sometimes you can just afford to take this damage reduction, and what happens here is that we have an extra 3%. We go up here, we go to 20%, and then we get another 15% on top of this. That's not bad. That's a decent amount of damage reduction. 3%, however, it's only worth taking if you're able to not move as much. If you have to move a lot, it's way better to take this. This one's just extra damage. If you're really hooked on damage, I guess you can have that. It's not great. I take this one because mobility and damage is just really important. I like having this one because it resets your force speed. Your force speed has a lower cooldown. You also have movement speed during polarity shift. This means more uptime on polarity shift, and this also means more uptime on your force speed. So that's just overall win-win for DPS and mobility. But you can also take this. The damage loss for taking this is not that great considered with the gain that you get from this. So for example, it lowers the cooldown of natural preservation, which is best self-heal. And let's go to damage reduction, and we'll showcase. So I've got that, and then I've got this, and then another 15% on top of this, but for our passive DR. You have quite a bit of DR, and then you can top suppression on top of that. So you can hit some massive damage reduction windows there, which will really help you survive if you think that you actually need that. That's a viable talent. Phase Walk is a weird one. It doesn't give you the defense chance anymore. Typically the way I would advise probably using Phase Walk is to use it before you take the damage, or take a little bit damage, like take a thermal, but then phase. So then you're not forcing yourself to have to barrier. Heal up, and then, you know, obviously probably move away. You probably want to move away, heal, and whatnot, especially in arena. Phase damage windows that are going to really hurt you, especially you have to be aware of your team. If your team is not around and they all just like clobber to you, that's a bad situation, but in reality, you can probably just walk away if you're noticing that your team's scattering, instead of having to use your phase walk. In arena is like very important how you use your phase walk, and I recommend not being close to your phase walk, sometimes cutting the opposite direction before you use your phase walk, because that forces players to kind of like play into your hand, which is weird to say, but it's kind of like how it works. And then for 8v8, you can use this a little bit more greedy. I would highly recommend using it as a way to drop target with somebody, and if somebody is not like super hardcore focused on you, you should probably use this to just get away from them so you can reset target. But let's say if you know that they're hardcore focused on you, try to bring them into your team and have somebody help peel you off. Dealing with somebody that's just trying to 1v1 you all the time as a sorcerer is a huge annoyance, and you become less valuable to your team in that situation, because then you're not able to do optimal damage because you have somebody literally hitting you in the face, and you can't quite ignore them. So it is a weird situation as ranged DPS. You are a little bit reliant on the rest of your team. It's not the same as in arena. You are relatively durable, and you can take quite a bit of damage as Madness. So it's basically kind of like lethality in a way. You're using your defenses pretty much off rip, but you're also maintaining them. So for example, as long as you're doing damage, you have your 15% damage reduction. As long as you're using your resurgence on cooldown, you're getting the white damage reduction. If the white damage reduction is not important, and your force is getting like, you know, wrecked from doing it, maybe don't do that. And if you can ever get static barrier off and nobody's going to pop it and you need healing, I would highly recommend doing the static barrier method instead, because it'll be less force for more healing instead of spamming this. You spam a couple of these, your force is utterly destroyed. The best ideal for healing, if you're not under direct attack, is static barrier and resurgence. So it's basically a retroactive like class. You play just normally and you get damage reduction, but also if you're getting targeted, you can phase walk to get away from it, or kite in the other direction, then phase walk. So you're like buying time for you and your team. Also, don't ever forget you have the root there, which is nice, but obviously it's not necessarily a defensive. You can take the damage reduction on natural preservation, and then you have lastly our final defensive here, which is usually your ability that you want to use to buy time. So this also, if you're taking surging speed, will reset your force speed. So you can use force speed, barrier, then use force speed once again. However, if you're not taking that and you're taking the natural preservation, you won't get that. And it is good to sit for your full duration of your barrier, because then you get more enduring bastion, which means not only do you get more heals out of it, you absorb more damage. And it's debatable when to use your barrier. I would highly recommend using it just in like massive burst windows, like explosive fuel, short cannon, like all that stuff, to basically not get absolutely nuked and or buy enough time for somebody else to come back to protect you or help you. It's more so about buying time. I would do your best to not use Phase Walk and Force Spare at the same time. If you do that, you're a goner and people can just finish you off. You want to try to like weave those in as much as you can, because you can get 2 Phase Walks off by the time Force Barrier is back. So just try to keep that in mind. So you use Phase Walk first, or you can be wild and face tank and use Barrier first, and then use a little bit later Phase Walk, and then try to use another Phase Walk before you ever get Barrier back. But obviously you should use Phase Walk, Barrier, and then you probably will have another Phase Walk after your Barrier. So just try to keep it in the loop of the shortest cooldowns first. Obviously you get Suppression too. Suppression should be your first go-to damage reduction, and then obviously whenever you need healing, if you're taking that, that damage reduction, that's really nice. Most of these concepts will apply to lightning, which I'll go to lightning right now. Lightning is a little bit different, but for the most part, it's not insanely different. So getting into lightning, I put my gear back on, even though it's not optimal gear. We'll show you this class also gets passive stacks for damage reduction, and I'll show you that real quick. So let me force speed, and I'll use this. So we're gonna just use lightning bolt a couple times to get our stacks, and you'll see how my damage reduction is, pretty much it's gone up, right? It also does for my alacrity. So for example, I've got 15% more damage reduction than I usually have right now. So just like Madness, it has damage reduction available. The only difference is if the duration was buffed for lightning, which I'll show you in just a second, if the duration was buffed just slightly, maybe by 2 seconds, it would be harder for it to fall off. The big issue of lightning is that if you're doing optimal damage, chances are this thing is going to fall off of you. So you get 5% for 1, 2, and then 3. So you're at 30%. So it's this stack right here. So we're looking at this stack right here. This one lasts for 10 seconds. If it lasted just slightly longer, it wouldn't fall off as much. But the problem is that instead, what they could do is just make it proc off of more than just lightning bolt. The fact that it's mainly just lightning bolt that resets it, or I think it might only be lightning bolt. Yeah, it seems that it is only lightning bolt here. The fact that it's only that is rough. Like, you're not always going to use lightning bolt, so it's going to fall off and you're going to have that damage reduction lost. That's something you have to actively think about when you're playing this class to keep your damage reduction up compared to Madness. Madness doesn't have to think about it at all, which I would say is relatively unfair. I do think that they should add maybe like Thundering Blast, or like maybe Thundering Blast as an extra way to refresh it, so they can keep their damage reduction maybe up a little bit more often. That's the main difference that you'll see between this spec and the other spec. And then there is a talent that we can take, this one right here, which gives you 5% damage reduction for 18 seconds after you use Thundering Blast. It's not terrible. It's not great. It's not terrible. Right? Just extra 5%. As you saw, Lethality has a talent that just allows you to take this too. So it's much like that one for reference. You can obviously take the other ones, but I mean, there's no reason not to take this one. As for these other ones, this one also works on halted defense. So if you're playing Stormwatch, this actually does work on halted defense too, not just Stormwatch, or I mean Chain Lightning. So to keep that in mind. Then you have Suppression, which is normal, and then you can also take this right here when you're using Chain Lightning. This will reduce the cooldown of your Unnatural Preservation, which is pretty good. And then if you tie this with Unnatural Vigor, pretty good, not gonna lie. What I would like is if this wasn't tied to only Chain Lightning, if it was chained to also halted offensive. These two work together. Like maybe these swapped right here, like this came down, this maybe buff this to make this better, and then swap these positions. I think this talent with halted offense would be really good, because then you're single targeting, you're not messing anything up, and as long as you're maintaining your rotation, you're getting a lot more cooldown reduction on that unnatural preservation. Then you can also afford to take unnatural vigor and have this up more often. But overall, you can take this with chain lightning. Obviously, this doesn't mean you're doing AoE, which is a little bit more helpful for regs. Let's say you don't have a healer, you're playing without a healer, there's no healer on your team. Using this, you have chain lightning. If you're just doing your rotation, you'll have this come up more often, which means not only do you get extra healing, you also get extra damage reduction, which is really, really just nice. And regs. There's definitely something to think about for Arena 2, but the problem with that is that you're taking chain lightning, and sometimes halted defense is just going to be better. So it's something to think about. Overall, there's nothing too crazy about the spec. The best way to play, or I guess deal with this spec, is trying to CC it during Polarity Shift. Polarity Shift is its biggest damage window. It gets 20% amplified damage when Polarity Shift is up. And when it uses Force Speed, it gets another 20%. I don't have my implants on, so I can't show you, but you would have a 40% damage amp with Force Speed and Polarity on one ability, and then you would have just 20% flat. So whenever they have this in this animation right here, this is when they're most deadly. CCing them or not letting them cast is a priority when they have this up. That would be the easiest way to deal with them. Other than that, their damage reduction is just pretty simple. There's nothing you can really avoid, and you just want to burn them, basically. Nothing complicated, nothing too crazy. It's more so about the sorcerer playing and kiting and ability to play, I guess you could say. Other than that, we're going to go into the next class. Alright, immediately diving into Mercenary here. I have not bothered to gear this class yet, this expansion, though I've seen some things that I've really wanted to gear this, or not Deception, Arsenal for. However, I've just not gone around and done it, so we're not going to be able to get the full experience here, but I can at least grab my armor. I'll grab my pistols real quick and I'll show you some things. So we'll grab this and we'll go into the first thing. Again, for damage reduction, this is a heavy armor class, so it's able to have more damage reduction in general, but it's also got a passive talent, which I believe I think I am taking. Yes, I am. Power Barrier. So for example, let's go to damage reduction. We have 11%, 25.7, just like Vanguard. Pretty much the same, very simple. So we're going to go and build our Power Bearer, which is either from MedScan or Tracer Missile, which is very basic. It stacks up to, again, 3 times, but obviously we can get Supercharged Gas. I mean, further that, I'm just going to build my Supercharged Gas in the background. So basically what happens here is that we get extra damage reduction. It's not a crazy amount of damage reduction, but it's extra. We got 6%, both internal and elemental, so that's yellow damage, and then we have 6% on armor penetratable damage reduction to white damage. Well, it's not great. You can pretty much permanently upkeep that, so that makes it a little bit more tanky, right? It's not necessarily, being completely honest with you, it being 31% damage reduction, it's almost 60 for yellow, but 31 for white, but 6% non-armor penetratable. That gets complicated really fast, so let's just stop talking about that. But for the main example, that's like the first thing that you'll notice that Arsenal and IO have. I believe IO has it. Let me just double check, just in case I'm forgetting here. No, it does. It does also have it. All right, so let's go back to Arsenal. So we'll start with Arsenal. So getting into it, for the most part, you've got multiple options. For example, you can take Super Colto, which I'm not taking because I'm taking On the Move. On the Move is very nice. I'm taking Hydraulics because mobility is more important to me. But in Ranked, you're probably going to take Reflect because Reflect is just so valuable. Trauma Shield is just so incredibly valuable. Plus, it's on your best defensive that's up the most of the time. I don't like the ideal of clicking off Energy Shield at all because it's your main source of damage reduction, and clicking it off is just completely defeating the purpose, but sometimes you absolutely do need that heal. So I wish they would just change how Trauma Regulars worked, and then clicking off your shield. Make that probably not possible. If you change the way it worked, people wouldn't need to click it off for the heal. And as their main source of damage reduction, I don't like it. I think it's a bad design. Then you can probably take Cultist Surge. This does mean that you won't be able to use bracing bolts on the move, which is not the end of the world, but Super Culto, you're probably taking that for the extra damage, the ability to take extra damage. This does make you way more of a pinata, I guess you would say, because you're losing mobility. You don't have a hard stun. You have net, but you'll be able to take more damage, which sometimes that's really all you have to do, and that's completely okay. Another thing I want to mention is that it's never really worth taking Jet Escape or Improved Vents, and the reason why is because this is what lowers the cooldown of your energy shield, but it also gives you chances to basically absorb damage, or basically absorb damage. It's actually really not bad, the absorb part, and then also just having your energy shield up more often, which is your main source of damage reduction. As I said before, you pretty much always need this. So I just want to get that out of the way. I see a lot of people sometimes not taking this, and you're totally griefing yourself not taking it. And then we have another ability called Chaff Flare, which gives you melee and ranged defense chance by 35%. Which is weird that it says melee and range. But basically the way to think that is any white damage ability is hitting you. And then you have 2 charges of decoy. Each charge of decoy intercepts and absorbs 1 incoming force or deck attack. So in a way, Chaff Flare is really good, but also takes a lot of control. So it's like Sonic Rebounder in a way. So think of it like Sonic Rebounder. As we've talked about that before, this is kind of like the same way that you should use this ability. And overall, the rest of this stuff is just damage stuff, I believe, so we don't have to worry about that. So the main thing that you're going to think about when you're playing this class and how to manage defenses. So I'm not taking Super Culto, and I also don't have Reflect. So what does that mean for me? I need to make the most of my mobility. I need to not have somebody come up in my face and hit me, and I need to also make sure that I'm able to kite and use my mobility to my advantage. So the way that I'm going to want to have to play is abuse my mobility. Abuse the fact that I can slow people, I can root people, and I can keep people away from me. Actually, I don't think we have the Missile Blast root anymore. So maybe not root people, but definitely keep them at bay. We don't want them on our face. But let's say if somebody is to get to me, the way I will want to open up with abilities is the lowest cooldown first. So for example, if I'm using Tracer Missile, I will not have to do it this way, but I'll pretty much always have my power barrier going, which is extra damage reduction. Shield is my best defensive, and sometimes it's best to just, use it on cooldown. So let's say I'm taking damage, I'll probably start with Chaff Flare. If that doesn't get rid of them, I will use Shield. But usually Chaff Flare is enough to maybe get somebody that's not really ready to commit to you to go away. You can also use Jet Out. Jet Out is not necessarily defensive, but it is a repositioning ability that will get people to give up on you. And if it is a Vanguard, they'll probably pull you if you don't use your second one. And they might pull you during the use of your second one. So it is debatable on when you want to use it, but just do keep that in mind. And you also have Knockback, which is technically not a defensive either, but would allow you to then create distance once again. Shield is your best defensive again. It's a 2-minute cooldown, and it can be reduced by 3 seconds every 1.5 seconds that you're taking damage. So you have it a lot, and it's 25% damage reduction. So for example, let's build our stacks, and we'll show you kind of like what your damage reduction is looking at. Like, so we have 31% plus another 25%. So we're at 30, 40, 50, and we're at maybe like 56.7. That's not bad. You would bet 46.7, right? Or no, 0.8? No, 7. Okay, no, I'm completely done. Forgive me for internal and elemental, because your power barrier does not apply to your. Or is it applying? Oh, it is applying to your internal, isn't it? Yeah, okay, so it is. So yeah, it would be the same. Okay, my bad. I'm just stupid. So it would just be 10% less. So that's good, right? So shield, super good. That's your main source of damage reduction. You don't really have anything else. So It's more so about your mobility and your kiting ability. So things like net, knockback, jet out, and just like trying to keep distance from the target. Obviously, you can also pop. I wonder if we still have this. I think they do, but I'm not sure. Increases your armor penetration by 15%. Okay, so you don't have the defense chance anymore when you pop this. Okay, that sucks, but that's okay. Like we don't mind about that. So when we pop shield, here we are, 56.7, and oh, it's only 41% internal and elemental. That's not bad, right? Overall, that's really not bad. Again, shield main source of damage reduction. So in arena, it's a little bit different. So when you're in arena, let's say you're taking Cold Surge and Reflect, for example. I don't have them on my bars, but let's say we're taking it this way. We'll no longer be able to use Brazen Bolts on the move, so we'll have to stay stationary when we use that. But this also means that our Culto will proc at 60%. As we learned with, what's it called? Pyro Culto and Powertech Culto, it works differently. So the way Culto basically works, I haven't actually explained it when I was talking about Powertech, is that again, this will last for 8 seconds. But the thing that's different with Mercenary Commando with this talent is that it'll tick twice. So when I pop this, it gets procced. The slightly longer that it's gone off, like if you're able, like the first few ticks won't heal you for a lot. And then once it starts going, it'll start ticking faster and faster and faster, and it'll do double the ticks. So this means that once it's basically kicked in and you're not like dying, as long as you like ride on your Culto around 65%, it'll do a massive amount of healing. So one thing that you should be thinking about when you're riding on Culto is, am I doing this? Or am I doing this? You probably shouldn't, unless you absolutely need to, if they're going to kill you through Culto. Let the Culto heal you. It will heal you up to 65%. If they don't have enough damage, it will heal you up to 65%. It's much better to just let it do the healing while you do the damage. And then once it's about to fall off, or it's going to fall off, then be doing this. Because otherwise you're building up heat and you're not doing damage and you're not a threat, when you could just be relying on it actually healing you. So that's one thing that you always want to keep in mind of if you're actually taking the better Culto. I see this is a huge problem for a lot of people. Sometimes people even pop their med pack when they're running on Culto, which completely defeats the purpose of Culto. But since I'm not taking that, I want to go back. And then we have responsive safeguards. So basically, it's 50% reflect, not great. And some abilities will still go through halted offenses, one of them, which is a deadly ability right now. So much so that it's getting nerfed on the 18th by 50%. This is relatively good. It's like a oh no button, right? So it's like a reflect, but it'll also heal you. It's like an enraged defense, but also having a reflect at the same time. You're still vulnerable to AoE and some bugged abilities like halted offense. This is really nice. This is something that you probably either use at like mid health or any burst window you're about to take, or a save you kind of thing. You don't want to use this too low because people are smart enough to use AoE, and then also at the same time, it's good to probably use it when you're actually going to take something that you can actually reflect. For example, thermal detonator. In 8v8, chances are you're going to get the most value out of this, but in arena, you have to be a lot smarter about how you use this ability, so do keep in mind. And then again, trauma regular, super easy. Shield's like the #1 thing that you're going to go in there and use. You're going to use Culto last, you're going to use Chaff Flare and Shield pretty much right off the rip. You don't have to use them immediately. It is better to try to time your Chaff Flare to make it more useful. But overall, that's like pretty much everything for Mercenary. We'll go into IO because I'm pretty sure there's not any differences, but just to make sure. I wonder if this spec has, it probably doesn't, but I'm going to check if it has defense chance on supercharged gas. If it does change things a little bit, but for the most part, supercharged gas window is basically tied to your burst window. So I should probably have a weapon. There we go. So we pop this, and no, we are not getting any sort of defense chance, which is completely fine. Completely fine. overall, IO works the same. I'm going to double check real quick. All right, pretty much confirmed that it works the same. The only difference was going to be chaff flare. Don't take my talents. This is just random talents. I didn't actually select like any of these. Like as you see, I just selected this ability. Chaff flare pretty much works the same. That's okay. I thought it actually would work differently for IO. It doesn't. So they're pretty much identical in the same way that they would play. Same talents, same everything. Pretty much no difference. So that's one thing that you just want to keep in mind. As a spec, you can definitely get away with not having what is it, the on the move. That's Roll of the Hunt. So something like Sorcerer Sage is probably way more viable because the on the move ability that you would have is unload, and you don't necessarily always need to use unload. It's not like the biggest burst damage ability, so in everything you can get away with it a little bit more, and even in regs too. However, you know, if you're able to just do constant sustained damage, you're going to have to stand still a lot, just like Arsenal, which means that you're already going to be standing still for your suited shot. You're going to be standing still for your power shot. Why not stand still for your unload? Though if you want unload on the move, which is debatable on whether the power unload on the move is equal or better than Surge, is up to you and how you want to play. Most of your defensive power is going to be from kiting and keeping enemies at bay, and also being aware of where you are, as all range are going to be more reliant on where they position, how they position. Are they easy to attack, or are they hard to attack? Something you always have to be thinking about as both a melee and range, but as range it's a little bit more important because you can mitigate a lot of damage by never taking it in the first place because nobody can hit you, which is very important. And that's pretty much it. You would pretty much have no problems really picking up this class and learning it in a day or two defensively. This has been the recommended ever since about 5.0 class to pick up and learn to play because they gave it a crazy treatment. Before we had Juggernaut. Juggernaut was the one that everybody would recommend because it had had two different healing defensives, which made it an actual Juggernaut. It's like actually felt like a Juggernaut. And then the only other class that really had a self-healing defensive was Culto, and then they were like, all right, well, let's give Super Culto to Mercenary. Then let's also give Trauma Regulators to Mercenary, so that's a second healing defensive. And then they gave them a third with Reflect. So they gave them a Reflect and a healing defensive. So then they gained 3 healing defensives. And ever since then, Mercenary has kind of been the Juggernaut that used to be pre, 5.0. So definitely a class if you're new to the game, you're looking at defenses and how to manage your defenses, I would recommend learning how to play this class as a range because it'll be way easier. Other than that, we're going to move into the final class, which is going to be a lot more complicated. All right, now this is the final class that we'll be covering, Sniper and Gunslinger. Unfortunately, this class really got hit really hard. It's very, very, very sad to see. So for example, the first things that we're going to go over is that roll is just like concealment roll. You're completely immune during that roll on all 3 specs. There is a weird interaction where sometimes overload will knock you while you're in mid-roll. You're not supposed to be able to get knocked during roll. That is not a common occurrence, and that should not happen. I think that's a damage type mismatch. For some reason, I don't know why it's like that, but hopefully they do eventually fix that. Then there's also like generally a mouse, like if you're in crouch, like there's sometimes if you roll while you're holding the right click, you can get your camera stuck and you have to use both the clicks to get rid of that. It's the main reason why that I don't really enjoy this class, and I try not to play it because I find that infuriating. But also the fact that its defensives are really doo-doo right now. There's no other way to say that. So first thing first, when you're in crouch, you have extra defense chance. So I'll just go ahead and show you that. At least I believe you have extra defense chance. I could be wrong. No, you do. So you had 20%. Wasn't wrong. I still remember this. Thank God. So you have 25% defense chance when you're actually in cover. That's something that a lot of people don't think about, and that defense chance doesn't really help because most damage types that are going to be hitting you anyway are just going to shred right through it. My armor reduction should be at 20.5 or something, I think, because I believe this class uses medium. And then obviously base damage reduction. So let's say we roll here. So you'll see my dimensions go on 200%. Really straightforward. Then you also have this ability, which can give you, well, actually it does. So it gives you extra damage reduction for AoE 60%. This makes you CC immune. CC immune is nice, but unfortunately, you don't really mitigate damage while you're CC immune. You still get wrecked. You have a Zorb, which is nice. It absorbs 32,000 damage. Great. Nice. 32,000 damage is literally one ability, so not that useful. Then we have a talent. Where is it? Can we even afford to take it anymore? I think we can. So we had damage rush on that, but that's not the one that I'm thinking of. There's this one right here. So you either take this one. Here's the cooldown of your CC unit, which is very important. Or you could take this one. This one's actually pretty good. I wish this was just baseline. They really should just make this baseline. Because you'll always pretty much want to have this. Or just make this baseline and then we can select this or something else. Then we have damage reduction when you use Bang Trace. Bang Trace is isn't that that's your reset ability right here? Hold on, let me move this over here. This button right here, yeah. So this is your reset for your defensives, which is nice, but unfortunately your defensives just aren't good. So resetting them is only so great. Scrambling field. Well, obviously you probably don't want this, so you're probably going to take either Hideout, which is going to be like Phase Walk, but I think it has slightly less range, which is nice. It just teleports you. Actually, no, it seems to have. No, I think it is around the same range. It doesn't give you damage reduction, but it's basically like Phase Walk, and you can use it to like get out of bad situations. Or you can use this, which is a team utility ability, which is nice because you have diversion. So this is a main defensive that you'll first pop outside of roll, is diversion. This will lower people's yellow and white damage chance to hit you, which is also AoE and helps the team, and it scales with alacrity, even though I don't have alacrity showing here. So when this comes up again, I'll show you how it scales with alacrity. This one does not scale with alacrity. This is for team, so everybody in here will get damage reduction. This is an incredible team ability. It's definitely one of the better options. I wish it was just baseline, to be honest, considering this class doesn't have very many defenses in general. This ability is really good for team like positioning. It's very good. The extra damage reduction matters a lot. So for example, you won't see it here, which is really weird, but you are getting the damage reduction from the passive there. It's another one just like for Revitalizers. So here we're about to get this again, so we'll just wait for this real quick. I want to get alacrity from this ability. This gives me 10% alacrity. See, this is 56.4. So I'm going to pop this alacrity, and it's now 51.6. So you see how that scales with alacrity. My alacrity is really low, but let's say I had high alacrity, that would be like 51 second or 49 second or something like that. That would be really good. So having that on a lower cooldown is just generally good. Then outside of defense screen, which only absorbs a certain amount of damage, we have surrender. Wait, is it surrender? Am I forgetting it? No, surrender is definitely it, right? Okay, so for whatever reason, they decided to put evasion. Evasion doesn't purge anything. I don't know why. They never bothered to change it. They definitely could have changed that. But bunker down will reset that ability. So for example, our evasion and our movement speed is now tied to surrender, and we can take talents to change it so I can get extra damage reduction out of Bang of Tricks, and then taking this makes my absorb more and reduce the cooldown of Bang of Tricks, which means I can have things up more often, which is nice. And then ballistic dampers is generally so good. I'm so sad that they're not able to necessarily take that, but here is the main thing here. Surrender grants dodge stance, increasing your chance to dodge melee and range attacks by 200%, reducing the damage you take from force attacks by 75% for 3 seconds. 3 seconds is not a long time, and it does reset your roll, which is nice. So you can do something like roll, and then you can do that, and then you can have roll again, which is nice. And you also have the dodge chance and all that, which is really nice, right? But the evasion part of this like evasion, the dodge stance, it needs to be separated from it. It shouldn't be there. And force and tech damage reduction by 75% for only 3 seconds. It's not very good, especially considering the force and tech damage resistance for 75% never actually worked correctly against like things like energy burst. It is pretty problematic. But for example, pretty much everything is just like tunneled into one ability here, which is my ability on number 7. Technically, I should just put it here. So for example, I can show you like defensive priority, definitely roll, because you can roll anything, you're immune during the roll. You throw a diversion, and obviously you have entrench, use entrench whenever, pretty much off cooldown to maintain your CC immunity and your mobility while you're moving around. Even while you're doing this, you are immune to controlling, only active during that, but if you keep doing this, you can like catch CC as you're moving. Obviously, you can get caught at any moment that you're outside of this. Keep that in mind. And then when you're using this, you have this buff, melee and ranged, increased, which is nice. And then when you roll, you've got free entrench for a few seconds. So typically, roll entrench whenever you need it for CC immunity, diversion for yourself or your teammates. And then let's say if you're taking bubble, I would highly recommend probably popping that first as like damage reduction if you can actually afford to stay in it with your diversion. Pop absorb on cooldown probably should be one of your first abilities to pop, like pre-pop it. Maybe not completely pre-pop it, but pre-pop it as you're taking damage to prevent yourself from actually taking damage, because you don't have any way to get your health back at all. You're literally screwed. So once you've taken damage, you're just screwed. Remember that with Alacrity, you can have reduced cooldown on your diversion, and then your main defensive will be Surrender, which is creative. No, it's what is it called? I don't remember. Countermeasures. That's what it is. And so we could go through everything here, and we entrench, and then when we hit X, that gives us damage reduction, but also resets our cooldowns, which is nice. It's really nice that it resets it, but unfortunately these cooldowns suck. So you have Z again, which is absorb, and then we have this again, and obviously roll and entrench again, which is nice. But it's very easy to go through all these defenses, and it's very easy for all these defenses to virtually do nothing for you other than give you mobility to run away. Which mobility is not how the class plays. So for example, half of your abilities you just have to be in cover to even use. So to do effective damage, you're not really even able to, you're literally basically not able to do effective damage unless you're in cover. So the design philosophy of giving them a whole bunch of movement speed or repositioning tools, which obviously they should have repositioning tools, but they're just not able to actually make incredible use of it. For Arena, for example, you're probably never going to take Scrambling Field unless you know that you're 100% going to die with Hideout in the middle of nowhere for using it. Though even then, like sometimes it's even better to use because it can get you out of really bad situations. So it's literally just a phase lock for the most part. So I can put it down here and I can give you a showcase of what happens. So I'm here and then I pop this, and since I'm taking the tactical, I can instant ambush. But you'll have to immediately hit cover after you use that ability because it will take you out of cover. So that's a really weird thing. I don't know why it does that. But overall, the spec is very squishy, very screwed. There is one difference. Let me go. I think it's not Saboteur, it's Dirty Fighting, I believe. The main difference of Dirty Fighting is that it gets 15% damage reduction after defense screen ends. So that's one thing for, I guess, for one of the specs. So when I pop Absorb and it falls off, just like Lethality, I get extra damage reduction. That's nice, I guess. Why is it another thing for all three? I understand why it's a thing for Lethality and Virulence, but overall this class is gutted. Again, Diversion. You also have Cover Pulse, even though it's not technically defensive. Entrenched for CC immunity. Don't necessarily have to put that in your defensive rotation. Obviously, it's your priority of defensives while you're doing other things. It's very important. So Diversion usually should be one of your most important abilities outside of rolling. Your rolling is lowest cooldown, but also gives the most value. Also, if it melees on you in this spec, it drops this, and Engineering also roots as you roll over people, but this leaves a giant slow puddle, which is super good. And again, you have Surrender, which is basically your evasion. And, like I'll go ahead and roll here and use the other defensives, and I pop this ability, doesn't reset my roll. In the other spec it does, but I think that's a unique difference between virulence. And then when I pop this ability, we've got defense screen back, we've got entrench back, and then we can pop this again. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing really too crazy to the spec. And as class, it is definitely not doing great. Can do damage defensively. It's just not. It's not good. Like there was like a bad design last expansion, and they further pruned it to the point that that bad design was made even worse, if that makes sense. So for example, I roll on this spec, it will do, like everybody that was there will get a bomb applied to them, it'll do damage, but it'll also root them, which is cool, I guess, but overall it's just not good. It's playable, I guess, in a way, but most people that are going to be playing this are going to be very experienced on the class. This would be the last class that I would ever recommend to anybody to learn how to play, and it's more so, again, the philosophy of using your defensives is to use your lowest cooldown defensives first and use them in order of duration or power. So for example, sometimes you use a stronger defensive that has a longer cooldown in very dire situations. Let's say you're getting opened up on and you got netted. You're probably going to pop in Dying Rage or whatever best defensive that you have to mitigate a lot of that damage, because that's a lot that you just committed to. And anybody else in that situation would have to do the same. And yeah, there's just really nothing crazy. You reset your roll with that in this spec too, but you also get the movement speed when you use Surrender, which is nice. Unless it's a talent, which I don't know. I don't think it is a talent. Right. I'm gonna double check just so I'm not like misleading you guys. Yeah, my bad. It is actually a talent. Obviously, besides just the, I didn't even think to check this, but I can't believe that they actually pruned that too. So you've got this. This is pretty good. The damage reduction is really nice, but this damage reduction is not like 20%. It's not 30%. It's not 40%. Like some classes are getting like 20 to 30% damage reduction on some of their abilities. So them not getting something similar and it only being 15% for 15 seconds. It's like so 15% is probably not going to save you too well. In the combination of like a Zorb, maybe for virulence. But for example, this is the movement speed one. So Sunder purges all movement and parrying effects when activated and grants reset engagement, increasing your movement speed by 75% for 6 seconds. This is pretty much equal to Hydraulics for PT. Additionally, well, that's just knockback from penetrating rounds. We're not worrying about that. So basically what happens there is that when I'm in this and I pop Trench, wait, no. That's different passive. Do we have that passive still? I swear. I should probably look at this beforehand. Okay, so there is this passive still here. So if you don't take the increased absorb, which probably not worth it. I definitely should have looked at this before I was even bothering. This is the one that I was thinking about. So while hunkered down ends, you leave cover. While hunkered down is active, you gain heads up, which increases your movement speed by 50% and grants you immunity to movement and parrying effects for 6 seconds. So for example, if I roll, I get my entrench because I'm a marksman, and I can run. I'm immune to roots and CC, or not CC, but roots basically while I'm doing this, and slows. So I'm able to run really fast during that. I can reposition a lot with being immune to roots. I can still get CC'd, but I would be able to like zoom, like doing this a lot. Nobody would be able to slow or root me. I can just constantly just keep doing this. So this is like a weird thing where they've just like forced a whole bunch of ability in this class. And then when I use this with the other one, not only am I immune, I move just as fast as somebody as a PT with hydraulics, and it lasts for longer. And then obviously we can reset that, use that again. Probably not ideal to do, but you can. I don't have my things keybound, so I'm using my FPS mouse, so I'm not able to use my normal keybinds. And that is pretty obnoxious. That is not a design that you would probably see on the class that's meant to sit here. Like this is a channel of, you know, a couple of, I mean, looking at the right thing. Well, aim shot. I guess I am looking at the right thing. but the channel is 1.8 seconds. Obviously, it gets lower, but there's a lot of channeling on this class. There's less that you have to be in cover for, and if you're not in cover, it just like goes against the design. Other than that, there's not really anything else that I could probably help with this class. I don't play this class as much, so that's why I don't know the talent order correctly. I thought I looked at it before, but apparently I hadn't looked at it at all. So, like you could take the damage reduction, probably not worth it, but the mobility is going to be probably what's going to keep you alive over everything. So, like these two things with hideout, which will probably allow you to actually get out of combat if you're able to kite pretty well. And overall, there's just like a lack of damage mitigation available, but you have roll, which gives you immunity, and then diversion that's really good. And then you have a sword that basically does nothing. You have a trench that gives you CC immunity, but also allows you to reposition better, which is pretty good. I feel like, if anything, that's probably one of the more valuable things. But unfortunately, you don't have like any sort of way to get your health back. So when you pop this ability is only so good. You're going to use it to reposition rather than actually get the benefits of the dodge or the 3 second 75% damage reduction to yellow damage. That's not going to be that useful, right? So overall, this class is gutted, not doing great, and we've got one more topic to talk about, and then we'll be done. All right, now we're going to cover the final thing. It's very important. It's taunts. If you play a melee and you have taunts, chances are you probably don't know how important they are or how they actually work. Taunts overlap each other, so if I use my AoE taunt, somebody else follows their AoE taunt. Does that mean that we're both splitting, or does that mean that we're doubling it up? It's simply the last person that used their taunt. That's basically whose taunt is going into effect. So for example, if I throw a taunt out for my team, I still take full damage, but everybody else besides me take 30% less damage. Right, if that makes sense. So if they're attacking me, I still take full damage, but if they're attacking anybody else after I've taunted them, they do 30% less damage to anybody else. It only lasts for 6 seconds. Both taunts, AoE, and single target lasts only for 6 seconds. So let's say we're in a scenario where I throw my AoE taunt out and then somebody else does their AoE taunt. So it goes from me taking full damage and everybody else taking 30% less to them throwing the taunt out and then everybody else, including me, take 30% less damage and then him taking full damage. So in a situation when you're throwing out AoE taunts, you don't want to overlap them. It's a complete waste to overlap them unless you have something like Sonic Rebounder tied to it or you have the Hatred damage reduction tied to it. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting it. Taunts are very valuable and they're very strong, and it's why some arenas and some 8v8s feel so difficult to make headroom in. Like they're way harder. Everybody's way tankier. You're doing way less damage. It's mainly because people are using their taunts appropriately, whether it's intentional or unintentional. If people were to use their taunts perfectly, the game would be a lot harder to play, I would say. Obviously, the coordination would be required to kill somebody would be a lot higher if people were more confident on how to play, but also at the same time using their taunts correctly. So let's give an example of where taunts will make a complete game changer, especially if you can synergize with your tank, or if you've had just synergy in general, and you understand, both of you understand how important taunts are and how damage reduction works and stuff like that. In an arena, let's say you're playing either group ranked or you're playing solo ranked, you got a tank kill game going, or just a tank DPS game, and you're playing a DPS with taunts, and they're obviously playing tank. In this situation, let's say the enemy team decides to tank tunnel. In this situation, if you're going to get guard, sometimes they're probably just going to drop guard completely. You're the one that wants to be taunting. The tank that you're playing with does not want to taunt. He does not want to taunt. Even potentially, he may not even want to guard. The reason he would guard is guarding somebody that's squishy that can support them, but also at the same time, if the damage is split. If they're only taunting the tank, this is where you need to be taunting. And if you have another DPS on your team that has taunts, they also need to be taunting, but you want to try to not overlap your taunts. So for example, let's say that they don't take tunnel. This is a completely different situation. We can't guard anymore as a DPS, so I can't give you the ultimate solution of like just cross guarding each other and then not having any issues. That was really overpowered. I'm glad that's gone. I'm sure I just triggered some PTSD for some people. I apologize. But I'm glad that's gone. That should have never been a thing. I don't understand why they even had that. That was batshit insane. Anyway, going into a situation where they're not tank tunneling and they're tunneling, let's say they're tunneling you with guard. The tank is going to taunt on top of having a guard on you. That's going to help him take less damage, but also it's going to protect you more. But let's say you're in a unique situation where the tank is taking more damage, but you need to have guard because there's a burst DPS that's probably going to swap to you, or you're just taking damage too. Maybe you're the main target, but the tank's taking more damage than you. In that situation, maybe you're better at mitigating that damage than him, but you still need guard, so you're not taking too much damage, but the tank is taking a lot of damage. So for example, Pyro and Lethality is a good example of this. Since you have .dr as Pyro, and if you're playing against Pyro and Lethality, you have the advantage. You're going to be way tankier in your tank, and your tank's going to take a shit ton of damage. Even if you do have guard, you're going to be wanting to taunt more than he does. So for example, let's say it's AP Lethality, which is the meta comp right now, and has been the meta comp for a while. Any situation that you get into where you're getting tunneled, you don't want to taunt, and then if it's like vice versa, tanks taking a lot of damage, you need to taunt for them. Never overlap the taunts, because if you do overlap the taunts, then it's literally just pointless. It's 30% damage reduction, which is a huge amount of damage reduction that is just usually gone wasted. So like if a PT is doing their opener on, let's say, you, right? The tank's probably going to guard you and probably taunt them. If not, just taunt them, and you're going to pop defensive. So it really just matters of what's going on. Obviously, your job is probably going to be taunting the lethality operative, because they're going to do more damage to your tank. Or if let's say the APPT is hitting somebody else, not hitting you, taunting them is completely fine. And if they're taking damage, like the guard, they're taking a lot of damage from guard. Let's say they're triple tunneling the healer. Your job would be the taunt. So whenever the tank doesn't have taunts, you'd be taunting. You want to try to get the person that has damage that can be affected the most by being taunted. Burst damage is harder to deal with all at once, so you're going to prioritize the APPT to taunt that person. You're going to taunt that person, basically, to make sure that that burst damage is mitigated better rather than just a whole bunch of multiple things, because lethality, just walk away from it. That's literally how you have to play against it most of the time, but also you can be very disruptive as a player. You can focus start the APPT, taunt him when he's not taunted, and help mitigate your team's damage, and then also literally just peel the lethality operative a little bit. There's a lot of different ways that you can do to help your team take damage or mitigate damage, I guess you could say. You can't just let people free cast overall, and taunts are the biggest factor in good and bad games, and games especially where people actually know how to play. Anyway, I don't know how I made this go on for 7 minutes about taunts. It doesn't really matter. A carp done, it's just basically don't let your taunts overlap. That's not a hard concept. I'm pretty sure everybody understands that. And since cross-guarding is not a thing anymore, you got to think about, is this spec doing my damage to my tank? I'll just taunt for him, vice versa. It's not just, the tank always taunts, that's their job. No, as a DPS, your job is to taunt too. It's part of your kit, and it's part of what makes you viable. And if you're not using taunts, you're less useful than literally anybody else. So something you definitely want to learn. And other than that, there's not really anything else that's crazy about this game that you have to learn. Obviously, when you're dealing with guard and you don't do primary damage to tanks, so like Pyro tunneling into guard is okay. Lethality tunneling into guard is completely okay. Chances are you're going to kill the tank, and the way that you're going to kill a tank is tunneling through guard, because the person needs guard, otherwise you kill the person that has guard, or you kill the tank through guard. It's one or the other. That's usually how you do it. And if you're not consistently pressuring people, that means that you're taking a lot more pressure, which means that they have more chance to come back. So on those specs, you need to understand the power of being able to cleave the tank and the guarded person at the same time. And this is where those taunts become way more valuable as that DPS, or even the third DPS. Other than that, there's pretty much nothing else. If you guys have any questions, or if you have situations, feel free to bring them up. I'll be happy to try to analyze or help what you could probably do, but also at the same time, do remember that none of these are perfect. Defenses and managing your defenses is more so about your self-limit testing. So I recommend going into regs and limit testing yourself and understanding how far you can go and how safe you can play, or how far you can push things. And if you don't know that, then you're never going to be truly comfortable, and you're not going to be able to do some of the things that I might say, like some of these defensive priorities won't work for you because you're just not fast enough, or you're not knowledgeable enough about the game to do it. So get in there, play some regs, understand what you should be doing, and then just try to make it happen. Other than that, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, morning, whatever. Apologize for such a massively long video. I figured I would try to do this as, I've been trying to improve the audio quality and improve my skills at commentating. Sorry for the last video's audio quality. Apparently somebody said that was bad. It's probably because I was too far away from my mic. I apologize. I understand that noise suppression lowers the quality if I can barely hear you. Again, I apologize. And here soon, I'm going to be playing a lot of New World, and I apologize if you guys don't like watching that content. I totally understand. I am pretty close to 2,000 subscribers, so that's really awesome. I was thinking, doing something special, but I got the series done, getting this video out. I don't really plan on making any other videos, but I'll still make PvP videos here and there. But I will definitely start making some more New World videos coming up here soon, and then also I'll be streaming New World quite a bit. So if you guys are interested in that game doesn't have technically tanks in it. So if you are interested in Arena, especially like Star Wars Arena, it's not completely similar. It's action combat. It's a lot of fun. Maybe give it a try.